Sometimes you have to ask uncomfortable questions, Diesel, and today is one of those days where I am going to ask a very uncomfortable question to Atlanta Braves fans. They're not going to like it. I've already got pushback on Twitter on my tease, but sometimes in journalism, you've been in this a long time. You got to ask the questions, right?
It's okay, Cole. It's not an uncomfortable question to me.
Good.
They're red. My underwear.
Gotcha.
My underwear today is red.
Gotcha. Well, that's interesting. We can move on to the next segment then.
Yes.
All right, let's take a break and come back.
Man, this radio thing is easy. Blowing through the brakes.
Blowing through it.
Woo.
Before we get to that, though, before we get to my uncomfortable Braves question for Atlanta Braves fans, Diesel, Scotty is free. He has been relieved of the charges. The charges have been dropped by the judge, and Scotty Scheffler will walk freely. Right move or wrong move from the judge to drop the charges.
Yeah, see, around here, we don't actually use the sound effects. They're probably trademarked by somebody. We just do it ourselves.
We do it around.
Bzzz,
It's called being original.
Yep.
So right move or wrong move for the judge to drop those charges of Scotty Scheffler?
1,000% the right move. This is a bad look for the state of Kentucky, for the city of Louisville. This was not going to end well for those police. I mean, everybody knows that Scotty didn't do anything wrong. The video came out. Granted, it was from a long way away, but you don't have to be watching this thing in 8K high def on your 65-inch plasma TV to know that what the cops said happened didn't actually happen. And again, that's one of those things, Cole, like as body cam footage is becoming more and more prevalent or required, which the irony in this situation is that the officer didn't turn on his body cam.
That's correct.
As he was required to do, that we are getting the truth very often. Very often. I wouldn't say the majority of times. I'm not going to put that on law enforcement, but very often police exaggerate what happened.
Well, you know what? Him not having that body cam on was probably a big leg that they couldn't stand on, right? Like that was probably something that they looked at and said, you know what? If you'd had the body cam on, maybe we don't drop the charges. However, hey, Mr. Gillis, you didn't have the body cam on. And by the way, you weren't here on Friday, and I completely forgot to tell you about this. We'll get to Braves in a second. Did you hear what Mr. Gillis, the arresting officer, did in 2013?
No.
Oh, I'll have to play this audio for you. So on Friday, I made up a story about how this went down. It was a real story, but I made up some details, right? He got arrested or in trouble, Diesel, for 2013. He was an officer. He had an intoxicated guy in the front seat, and he got caught doing donuts in a parking lot with an intoxicated guy. Same guy.
Wait a minute. Are these the cops from what was that movie called? Superbad? Are these the cops from Superbad?
I said that on Friday. Yeah. It sounded like a scene out of Superbad.
You know what? Put the charges back on. I like this cop. He's a good dude.
So
like if the body cam showed anything that even somewhat corroborated the story that he latched onto the vehicle and he was dragged a little bit. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell from 40 yards away plus at a high angled vantage point what exactly happened. I mean, you would think, Cole, that the burden of proof or the burden on these officers when they're filling out arrest reports and filing charges or suggesting charges is just the bare basic information. Here's what happened. Not like, here's how it made me feel. I felt like I was disrespected as an officer, so I'm going to up the charges.
Right.
Come on, man. This is one of those cop lied situations.
Yep, and you didn't have your body cam on, Mr. Gillis, so we apologize, but the charges are being dropped. I agree with you, Diesel.
Sorry,
I think it's the right move.
You are not the father.
Yeah, I think it's the right move.
It was.
For the Louisville PD. So we'll get back to that. We'll get your thoughts on that. 71307. Start your text with the word fan. But Diesel, I teased this on Twitter earlier today, as well as our Facebook page at the Fan Upstate. So I want to ask a very uncomfortable Atlanta Braves question to start the show today. And you have to, in order to answer this question, you have to do a little bit of dreaming, okay? You have to see the future a little bit. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I am going to tell you, as a Braves fan, that this season, your Atlanta Braves turn this whole thing around, right? You turn it around, and you start winning games late in the year. You get hot, and guess what happens? Without Spencer Strider, without a Ronald Acuna Jr., The Braves, 2024 World Series champions. That is what the scenario is that I'm portraying, okay?
Wow.
So you turn it around, you win the World Series this year. So here's where the question.
And we're talking in real life, not on PlayStation.
No,
right?
we're talking in real life, not on Xbox.
Okay.
Here's where the question comes in, Diesel. If that were to happen to Atlanta Braves fans, if the Braves were to win it all this season, you would now have won the World Series twice in a 4-year span without Ronald Acuna Jr.
Is twice definitive proof that the team is better without him? And that's basically what you're saying. At this point, you
I'm
have
asking
proof
the question,
that you're better without him.
That's why I'm asking you,
and
right?
Here's a beautiful thing about this, Cole. I don't think that they would, sell off Spencer Strider.
Yeah.
But if you can win it twice without Ronald Acuna Jr., you can now sell Ronald Acuna Jr. off for some other really big piece that you need, right? Braves fans love Ronald Acuna Jr.
Do,
we all love Ronald Acuna Jr. He is an exciting player to watch when he's available.
Correct.
But there's been almost two full seasons that he hasn't been available. So you could be a seller in this market and probably still get a lot for him, even coming off of 2 ACL surgeries.
It's an interesting / crazy / open-ended question. And the reason I say it's open-ended is if this were to happen, Braves fans, if Ronald Acuna, who is out, if you were to win the World Series this year, it would be, the second World Series you've won without your best player. So I'm not saying I would trade him. I'm not saying you should trade him all, as soon as the day after you win the Game 7 World Series. I'm not saying that. All I'm doing is I'm asking the question. If it were to happen, Braves fans, what do you do? Because as Diesel asked, if it happens twice, I do not think it's a coincidence, and I'm not saying he doesn't contribute. I'm not saying he's not the most talented player, him and Tatis. I'm not saying those aren't the most talented players on planet Earth. I'm just telling you, you as a Braves fan, and I'm in the Braves fan conversation as well, because I do pull for the Atlanta Braves. All I'm saying, Diesel, is if it were to happen, a legitimate conversation has to be had about why the Braves have been able to win 2 World Series without their best player. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying there's a possibility the Braves going to run. And you can't say, well, Cole, that's not going to happen, because it already has happened one time, right?
Can they go drag Soler back off of the Giants roster?
Be nice.
Bring him back. I mean,
nice.
He helped you win that title in 21.
Good to see Joe Nichols on the stream. Joe and I were conversating on Twitter earlier today about this very question. Joe saw the question and asked me, he guessed of what I would ask. And again, I'm not saying trade him off. Another friend of mine, Brad, him and I were having this conversation earlier today as well. I'm not saying it's smart to trade Acuna. I'm not saying you even think about it. However, all I'm saying is if it were to happen, we'd have to have the conversation about why. Like, why is this team able to win the World Series twice without their best player? And I know baseball's a team game, right? You have to have a good team, but usually the best players elevate the team. Usually they do. Texter from the 270 says, I would still keep Acuna. He's a good asset with his bat and base stealing ability. Texter, I agree with you. Again, I'm not sitting here today. Cole Bryson's not sitting here today saying it's time to trade Acuna. I'm just telling you that there is a possibility that the Braves go on a run, right? The Phillies are the team to beat. The Phillies are leading the division. As you heard yesterday, Diesel, when we had Jake Mastriani on, the Phillies are, for the past 3 years, the Phillies have been a very good team. Bryce Harper makes them a very good team. Ronald Acuna Jr. has not yet. He's still young. The facts are Ronald Acuna Jr. has not carried the Braves to the promised land yet. Okay? Diesel, can you imagine? Let's just play the imagine game for a second. Can you imagine what you could get for him?
Exactly.
God!
You could do very, very well for yourself in getting a young guy who you think has a lot of promise. I mean, you may not even have to expend anything else.
Right?
Yeah, you could get guys, multiple prospects. You could get a pitcher, add an outfielder for Ronald Acuna Jr.
So let us know if you're a Braves fan. Let us know where you stand on this because, I'll be honest for a moment. About 3 years ago, a friend of mine brought this conversation up, and I was very against this conversation 3 years ago. But today, May 29th, 2024, Diesel, I am not as against this conversation today as I was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I think we should trade him. That doesn't mean I think he's no good. That just means that you asked the question. We talk about it all the time with winning streaks. Like, if you win 2, it's not a streak. If you win 3, it's a streak. If you win 2 World Series without your best player, is that a coincidence?
I guarantee you Alex Anthopoulos is already thinking about this. Maybe not seriously. Fans lose their mind over trades, right?
Sure.
But fans, they don't actually have to make the hard decisions. You just watch.
That's right.
You just stream it on Bally. You buy a couple of tickets every year to go see the games. I mean, to you, does it really matter who's playing in the field? Probably not. As long as they're winning, you'll forget about whoever you had. I mean, think about this, Cole. How many Braves fans were pissed off when Matt Olson was brought in and Freddie Freeman was shipped off to LA?
A lot.
They were angry about that. And then all of a sudden, Matt Olson starts hitting a lot of dingers, and they're like, Freddie who?
Yeah. Oh, he's been incredible.
They get paid.
Yeah.
GMs get paid a ton of money to make these decisions.
Outside of this year.
Yeah, they have to think about these sorts of things. And I guarantee you, he's already thinking about, how much value could I get for Acuna after two ACL tears, after missing 2 seasons? We've done pretty well without him. We've shown that we could plug basically, Joe Schmo in there and still win a World Series. I think I could go ahead and make this move. Like, they should be making these moves 2 to 3 years ahead of when it absolutely has to happen. That's when you've got an elite level GM who kind of sees the writing on the wall and says, let's go ahead and make this move now. I remember when somebody on this station years ago, Cole, years ago, said it's time for the Green Bay Packers to move on from Aaron Rodgers while there's still value to be had for Aaron Rodgers.
Sure.
And what did they get when he left? Nothing. So imagine being able to get something for Aaron Rodgers back then. We're talking like probably 2016, 2017. I mean, he didn't win you anything in the postseason. So ditching that bum wouldn't have cost you anything. But fans were like, no, we got to keep Rodgers. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
You're right. The fans, it's very, very easy, Diesel, for the fans to say this and to say that. To be clear, if I were the GM, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't trade him away. However, I'd have the conversation like you and I and whoever else was in that executive office, Diesel. We'd sit down and we'd have the conversation. I'm not saying I have the to do it. I'm just saying I'd have the conversation. I personally love Acuna. Yeah. I couldn't trade him, but guess what? We'd have the conversation.
Well, the good news is the Braves, both in their major league roster and in their farm system, are so stacked with prospects that you probably have the guy already that you think can do a good job, that you think can fill those shoes fairly well. So you can move up a guy if you want to and bank some capital or really go out and get the guy that you really want in a straight up trade. But, the Atlanta Braves, they are in a very good position. Everybody always talks about how deep their farm system is and how deep their list of prospects is. So, they should get the better end of the stick no matter what they do with Acuna.
Texter from the 919 says, I'd consider if his deal wasn't so team friendly. We'll never replace that production level at that price. I agree with that texter. I agree with you. You're right. His contract obviously does have a lot to do with it. Another texter, this comes from the 590. 590 says, I would hate to trade away Acuna. He's still going to be great when he comes back. Plus, he's on very team-friendly deal, as the other texter pointed out.
How do you know, texter, that he's still going to be great? Because on one ACL surgery, he stole a lot of bases when the bases were enlarged. I mean, I'm not taking a lot away from the record that he achieved with the bases enlarged. but they were. And he that didn't slow him down. But the question is, will 2 ACL surgeries and a couple more years of age start to slow him down?
Texter finishes by saying, I just think it would hurt the clubhouse. And again, fair points, right? Fair points on the team friendly deal. I agree with that. And Acuna is a clubhouse guy. Like, I do like what he brings to the clubhouse. And to be very clear, if you just tuned in, I asked the question, what happens if the Atlanta Braves were to get hot this year toward the end of the postseason or toward the end of the regular season, go on a run and win it all without Acuna? It would be the second time in a 4-year span that your Atlanta Braves have won the entire thing without your best player, Ronald Acuna Jr. I, for one, if I were the GM, if I were AA, as I just said a few moments ago, I don't have the stones to trade him. I love him. But, Diesel, ACLs are not Tommy Johns. You are brought back stronger after a Tommy John. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that ACLs, after you have 2 ACLs, you're going to be, a lesser athlete than you were before. I'm just saying there is a lot more risk there because that surgery doesn't improve. Like, a lot of people get Tommy John, Diesel, and come out better because of Tommy John. It's not that way with ACL.
It's like getting your appendix removed. You didn't really need it, and now it makes you a couple ounces lighter, so that technically makes you faster in a way, in a weird way of saying it. Look, I mean, I question Atlanta Braves fans. What do you want your franchise to be? Do you want nothing to change in 10 years from now, all these dudes being in their late 20s, early 30s, and you feel good about all these legacy guys who have been around forever? Or do you want to stay young and stay competitive? I mean, I would want to stay young and stay competitive. Don't focus so much on the individual players, the individual pieces who are on your team, because trust me, just like we saw with Freddie Freeman, they will all leave you at the drop of a hat because they're making more money.
Yeah, and a guy
focus on winning and staying young and relevant for the long term.
And a guy like Max Fried, as good as he is, as good as he's been for the Atlanta Braves, the reality of it is there's a very strong possibility that he's not on this team next year. There's a very strong possibility. And Madcraft on the stream says, he chimes in by saying, I stand exactly where I've been standing. Acuna is the reigning MVP. Remember that ring in 2021 required Soler and Rosario to have historic postseasons. You're right, Madcraft. You're right. He is the reigning MVP. And I'm taking nothing away from Acuna. All I'm doing is pointing out what could be a fact if the Braves were to win it all. And again, as Diesel said, especially in baseball, I think a little bit more in baseball than most sports, fans love to cling on to the players. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, as we've seen with what Diesel said and Freddie Freeman leaving, you have to be willing to let players go, and it happens a lot more in baseball.
Well, you got a couple of examples of this, Cole. Braves in the 90s. Once those players started to get old, the franchise fell off. How about the Warriors over the past couple of seasons? Once all those pieces started to get old, the franchise fell off. So I ask you, what are you a fan of? Are you a fan of the players, the roster, or are you a fan of the franchise? The franchise isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
The roster will always change. No matter what you do, the roster will always change. So embrace the roster change, focus on the team winning, and move forward. I don't understand this. We can't move away from certain pieces, especially after they've been injured.
What's your name?
I mean, we just don't know. You just can't know what Ronald Acuna is going to be like after he goes through this second surgery and a second rehab. I mean, that's a long time from now.
And he's 26 years old.
Yeah.
I don't know that, like Tatis, I believe, without looking off the top of my head, Tatis is 25. I think Tatis is 1 year younger than Acuna. But it is interesting. And I'm not saying, Diesel and I aren't saying trade him right now. We're not saying trade him when he gets healthy. We're just saying that you're going to have that conversation at some point. And if you were to win the championship, boy, that conversation really becomes difficult. Before we hit a break, Dewey wants to chime in on the Braves. Dewey, what's up, man?
Yeah, Acuna has a bad attitude, so he needs to be traded. I hate that he got hurt, but he has a bad attitude. He's not going to make no money with the Braves. He needs to move on. and the rest of the team will just be just fine after they fire Snicker and hire Shane Beamer.
Oh, thanks for the call, Dewey. As always.
Dewey, what about your bad attitude, man? You call into this show every single time you call in. You never have a nice thing to say. What's going on in your life, Dewey?
I don't got a bad attitude.
There you go. Thank you, Dewey. Thanks for the phone call.
844-FAN phone. It's the renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone, 844-326-3663. Diesel, last thing I'll say, Acuna, as Madcraft pointed out, he is the reigning MVP. I'm not saying send him off, throw him away. I'm just saying if they were to win it all of a sudden, there's a very difficult conversation to be had.
Tolos, let us know where you're listening from on the stream or on the text line 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. You can watch us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. Just search for The Fan Upstate. Give us a like, a follow, a subscribe, whatever it is on the individual platform that you're watching on. We'd appreciate that. When we come back, Cole, Billy Napier, head coach at Florida, spoke out at SEC spring meetings. What he had to say about the Jaden Rashada lawsuit that he is named as a defendant in, $10 million on the line for Billy Napier. We'll get to that and what some of the SEC coaches had to say about some sweeping roster changes, proposals. That's on the other side right here on The Fan Upstate. You know that meme, Cole? I think it's like the deal with it meme where it's got the frog with the sunglasses on.
Yeah.
That's how Billy Napier is treating this $10 million lawsuit that he's named in.
When you said sunglasses, though, I thought the sunglasses coach that's in the Midlands.
No, Jaden Rashada sued Billy Napier and a couple of Florida boosters for $10 million after he says they offered him $13.85 million to come to Florida, but ultimately did not pay up. They had SEC spring meetings going on over the past couple of days. Billy Napier took to the podium and he said, I'm good with it. I'm comfortable with my actions and how he recruited Jaden Rashada. Here's the quote. I think it's important for everybody to understand that I can't comment due to the litigation, but I do have confidence in our legal team. I am comfortable with my actions, and I'm thankful for the university's support. We're going to keep it at that and kind of let the process take its course. So, like, obviously in these situations, you're not going to say anything that could potentially hurt you in court.
Yeah.
Right? But, I mean, for Billy Napier to say, yeah, I'm good with how we handled it.
You know, the very first thing that I thought of when you read that quote from him, you know what it sounds like? And I'm not saying it's true. Yeah. I'm just telling you what it sounds like. It sounds like it's not the first time he's dealt with this. You know, how do we know that this is the first time?
Yeah.
Right? How do we know that this is the first time any coach has dealt? I mean,
everything is hashed out in the court of public opinion these days, right? I mean, everything. You can't. I mean, any dispute. Think about the situation that happened at Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin and that player who had been out for quite a while. He came into Lane Kiffin's office and Lane kicked him off the team.
Sure.
That happens all the time in sports. I mean, players get booted off of teams for a lot of different reasons. It's only recently that, number one, there's huge financial issues at risk. I mean, think about a kid with a multi-million-dollar NIL deal.
Yeah. Getting
thrown off of the team. He's going to lose his NIL deal. Like, they're not. I'm sure some of them probably are getting paid a lump sum up front, but I'm sure a lot of them are getting paid incrementally in payments.
Sure.
So you do something stupid, you cost yourself your NIL deal. I'm sure there's clauses in all these contracts that they deal with, but all of this stuff is hashed out in the court of public opinion. Billy Napier, though, Cole said he hadn't even found out about it until being listed as a defendant in media reports.
Wow.
So, like, he didn't know it was coming down the pipe. He just found out, just like everybody else, that he was getting sued for $10 million.
I just don't see, like, I know you and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago at Ingles or wherever we were that day, maybe in here. As much as I do not have an issue with the player filing the lawsuit, I try to think, like, right now, Diesel, I'm trying to think of ways in my head that the player could actually win this. And I could be dead wrong. I just don't see, and if this continues to be a trend with head coaches being involved in these kind of lawsuits, I don't think the player has a chance.
I'm going to be willing to bet, Cole, that number one, this all goes away. Number two, Jaden Rashada ultimately goes down as a bust. I mean, he's a guy who is now bounced around between 3 different schools. Florida, what was he, Arizona State, I think. Now he's at Georgia. He didn't file the suit until he was at Georgia. Like, why wait until you're at Georgia to file the suit? If you're this bent about it, why not file the suit while you're at Arizona State? Why not distance yourself from it? Why put yourself back into that SEC maelstrom and then file this suit? Why hire the guy that's basically Saul Goodman in real life? Rusty Hardin, the guy that's defended every scumbag player and athlete who's ever gotten themselves in trouble. They all hire the same guy. They all hire Saul Goodman, right? So Billy Napier seems to be taking this in stride.
Here's the deal, though. You know, when it comes to legal teams, who's going to have the better legal team here? You know, like that probably has a lot to do, Diesel, with why Napier is confident. And I don't think he's blowing smoke. I didn't hear the audio, but I heard the quote that you just read. I don't think he's worried. You know, I don't think he has any concern. Like you said, I think he'll win it and it'll be dropped or whatever. And
I mean, it behooves Florida certainly to help him the full extent of legal situation that they can, right? Correct. Florida is not going to leave their, I'm guessing here, $5 million, $4 million a year coach out to dry.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe though, at this point, they may say, we're not sure that you're getting it done. We're going to leave you on your own. But I mean, they don't do that, right? They don't really handle things that way. They don't get rid of coaches in that way. But Florida is not going to let their head man go down with this. They're going to help him as much as they can with legal experts and advice. I'm sure Billy Napier is having to hire his own attorneys because remember, the University of Florida is not named in this lawsuit. Only Billy Napier and a couple of high-rolling, high-dollar boosters are named in this. He also says, quote, this narrative has been out there for always. He was asked how he's addressing this situation with recruits. And he said, this narrative has been out there for a long time. I think we got that question 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. And I don't necessarily think that it slowed us down to some degree. So look, we're going to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
This process has been going. Ultimately, the NCAA process, we can't say much more than that. So Billy Napier is being asked this question by recruits. Are you going to do the same thing to me? Are you going to screw me over in the same way? Which makes me think also that, number one, young players, sophomores, juniors in high school coming up, they're aware of this situation or that they even talk to one another. And he's saying, you know what? I've addressed it once or twice, but ultimately it didn't slow us down.
Yeah, and it's not going to. Ultimately, Diesel, they probably, with the landscape of college football and NIL like it is, they probably get that type of question a lot more than we think.
Sure.
And he did get a vote of confidence from Brian Harsin, former was he at Auburn? Is that right? Brian Harsin? Brian Harsin said, Coach Napier has always handled himself with class. He's a winner, 40-12 at his last program. He's following 10 years of fired coaches and is working to build some consistency with Florida. He deserves the benefit of the doubt.
Isn't Harsin the one that everybody hated at Auburn?
Yeah.
I don't know that I want to vote of confidence from that guy.
No, that's true. And I don't even think – I could be wrong, but without looking, I don't even think he's coaching anymore. I do not think he's coaching. So it is strange. Like – you and I, and tell me if I'm wrong here. I don't know that I've ever heard a lot of negative comments about Billy Napier. So you have no reason to feel like he was in the wrong.
He's a son of the upstate, played at Furman,
sure,
had a coaching stint as an assistant at Clemson. I mean, he's a guy who spent a lot of time right here in the upstate.
However, I say he's, been a good guy and you don't hear a lot of bad things about him. However, Diesel, I will say, I don't think the players are in the wrong for asking that question. I think they should ask the question, right? I think like recruits should make sure that, hey, I don't want this to happen to me. I'm not saying you did anything. I'm just saying I don't want it to happen to me.
Yeah. Are we going to enter a world now, obviously with House versus NCAA being settled, things are going to change drastically with how these guys are paid. Are they going to have to prove that the money is in the bank up front and it's earmarked for a specific player? I mean, it's one thing to say, yeah, we've got $100 million in the bank to pay all you guys.
Sure.
But guess what? We got, 85 plus guys on the roster and most of them are getting a piece of this. Are you sure that you have my piece of that $100 million in the bank? Is that part secured? Kirby Smart, Cole, weighed in on this as well. Of course, he was asked about it. He is Jaden Rashada's head coach there at Georgia. Rashada informed Kirby Smart that he'd be suing Florida the day before filing the lawsuit. So Kirby Smart was basically kept in the dark on this as well. He was not essentially Jaden didn't go to Kirby and say, hey, coach, I got this situation down at Florida. What should I do? Should I pursue this?
Yeah.
Should I leave it alone? No, he just went and did it. And Kirby didn't find out about it until the day before. But he said, quote, I told him that's between him, his family, and his attorneys. I'm not really involved in it. Georgia is not involved in it in any way. Georgia's clearly not trying to stop it. But Jaden is a good football player. He's coming out. He's got a good body of work. He has the ability to play, which is really crucial at the quarterback position. He's actually played and is very talented. Happy he's joining us and looking forward to working with him. So he's got a little bit of blinders onto this. He goes, I hear nothing. I see nothing. I don't need to know that my players are involved in legal actions against another school in this conference, especially with somebody that I don't know the relationship between Kirby Smart and Billy Napier. It's somebody that they may consider each other friends. They're certainly peers in this business. But I would think that having players on my roster embroiled in multi-million-dollar lawsuits that they are filing, not being filed against them, Cole, I would think that would be a big-time distraction, and I would not want that going on my roster.
So I was getting to that, and I'm glad you brought that up about distraction. I see both sides. However, I'll say this. 8 years ago, 6 years ago even, maybe this was a distraction. But my thought process, Diesel, is with the way that college football is now, are there any players that do not come onto your campus that aren't either a distraction or have some kind of NIL or transfer portal baggage? I think
Not the ones who aren't the best of the best.
Right. And I think we live in a world where coaches, the head coaches, ultimately, Diesel, are going to have to I don't want to say not care, but they're going to have to almost just get used to this, because I'm telling you right now, this is not going to be the last time this happens.
No.
So it's just part of the new era of college football.
Coaches are going to have to learn to just stay away from it.
Yeah.
It's not my job, not my problem. Don't come to me and ask me for questions about this. Don't ask me for advice about this. Don't say, hey, coach, what should I do? I'm thinking about suing one of your buddies over at the other school. And that's what surprises me a little bit, Cole, not to bring everything back to Dabo Swinney and his transfer portal ideas. But that's what surprises me is Dabo is saying that's not happening in my program regardless, right? He could hire someone or task someone on his staff and say, it is your job to handle all this NIL stuff. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to be involved with it. Don't ask me. Don't call me. The crazy thing is that Dabo did get involved in the recruiting of Joe Girard for the basketball program. It's a sticky point for me, man. People are going to say, well, Dabo's above all of this, but he got involved with it for the basketball program. Well, it's not his program. Doesn't matter. He got involved with it.
He's just not doing it for his own
He's just not doing it for his own team.
Oh, gosh.
Which doesn't make any sense.
Dabo's recruiting Bakich and Brownell, but he's not using the portal. He's not portaling his own program.
He's a hell of a baseball recruiter, I'm telling you.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of Dabo, speaking of Clemson, Diesel, I'm glad you went there because it's a good segue to what I want to discuss in the very next segment. The Clemson Insider, who is a very good publication, and we appreciate the work they do. We have their staff on frequently, and we'll continue to do so. But they put out an article that I want to get to about the offensive coordinator at Clemson and Garrett Riley. If Garrett Riley next season improves, obviously Cade Klubnik would have to improve because those two coexist. Would this year be a year where you could see Garrett Riley be on a short list for head coaching jobs? We'll talk about it, what this article had to say from the Clemson Insider next. He's Diesel, I'm Cole Bryson, and this is the Fan Upstate. So Clemson fans have been very adamant that they did not like the former offensive coordinator and his inability to be creative enough to win games for Clemson. Even though when Tony Elliott's tenure, Diesel, came to an end at Clemson, there were a lot of people, including local radio guys in this market, who were not fans of Tony Elliott. I always was. I thought Tony Elliott was a fantastic coordinator. Garrett Riley comes in, who was supposed to be a home run hire, and he and Klubnik coexist, right? Those two coexist in a way that most quarterbacks and offensive coordinators do. So I asked the question, Diesel, as we look at this article from the Clemson Insider that their staff put together, the question is it too early, or has Garrett Riley done enough that if he were to have a good year, he would be a name to watch for head coaching gigs across the country?
Well, to your point, if he does get a job, if he does leave Clemson, I think there might be a good chance you can get Tony Elliott back because he's not doing too hot at Virginia.
You didn't have to go there.
6-16 in 2 seasons at Virginia. Not good.
No,
not good.
Not good.
I know he's dealt with a lot of challenges at Virginia. You know, I mean, Bronco Mendenhall didn't help him out much in his last couple of seasons, and he's dealt with I seem to remember there was some sort of tragedy on the roster a year ago or 2 years ago.
It's a shooting, I believe.
Yeah. So, I mean, Tony Elliott's dealt with a lot at Virginia, but man, I don't think he's going to last too much longer if he's only winning 3 games a year.
He might not, but I'm just not convinced, Diesel, that Garrett Riley could do enough this year. And again, people may look at Riley, and because of his brother, they may think, oh, the last name could get him a job very similar to the situation Shane Beamer was in. I'm not saying Shane Beamer's name got him the job. I'm just saying it helps, right? It helps when your last name is Beamer. It helps when your last name is Riley. Well, could Garrett Riley do enough? And I want to hear from Clemson fans. 71307, start your text with the word fan. Diesel, the years that he has been there has been nothing that Garrett Riley has done that jumps off the page or gives Clemson fans an extreme vote of confidence.
No.
Has he been bad? No. But has he done anything that shouts, wow, this guy is a head coach to watch?
No, he's riding his brother's coattails. He's riding the last name Riley. And hey, ride it as far as you can. Get that money, baby, even if you don't think you're good enough for the job. I mean, hey, he might be a heck of a G5 coach at some point. I mean, it seems like there's this class of coaches, Cole, who almost never go down to the G5 level. You know, if you are in that upper echelon of coaches, if you've got that name, then you're not going to cut your teeth down at the G5 level. You know, you do the coordinator thing, you do the assistant thing, and then you get hired at an ACC or a Big Ten or, you know, a school like that. Garrett Riley's not that dude. Like he probably should be, but he's not going to be.
We know what he did at TCU. We know how Garrett Riley ignited TCU's offense. However, last year, as his first year at Clemson in 2023, Diesel, they were 5th. Excuse me, I misspoke. They were 50th. I forgot to add the 0. Clemson was 50th in total offense, right? There's nothing about being 50th in total offense that screams, hey, hire me. So, in my opinion, it would take a massive, massive jump for Riley to be on a short list. However, CBS Sports, they listed they had a list of coordinators to watch as possible head coaching candidates in 2024. The Clemson Insider writes, Riley is on the list. Diesel joined by Georgia defensive coordinator Glenn Schumann, LSU DC Blake Baker, Penn State offensive coordinator Andy Koltnicki, Alabama DC Kane Womack, and Georgia co-DC Tavarius Robinson.
Kane Womack was just a head coach, wasn't he?
He was. So there is what the Clemson Insider wrote about what Garrett Riley possibly could have to do. And I think it's fascinating to ask Clemson fans and to hear from Clemson fans in their opinion, if he's done enough, because I don't think he has. I think he'd have to have a massive jump. I think, obviously, the quarterback matters so much, Diesel, that Cade Klubnik's going to have to help Riley. Obviously, Riley needs to help Klubnik as well. But you know what? We talk a lot last year in 2023 about how Klubnik didn't look impressive. Well, guess what? I could say the very same thing, that while Klubnik last year did not look impressive, the play calling didn't look impressive either.
Well, one of the worst things that's going on in college football now, Cole, it's all driven by one thing. It's driven by desperation. Programs are desperate to find that next great head coach, right? So they're not giving anybody any time to develop, and they're not giving anybody who has a flash of a great season, i.e. Garrett Riley at TCU. They're not giving them enough time to show you a legitimate body of work.
Sure.
Garrett Riley had one elite season at TCU, boom, gets the job at Clemson. He hasn't shown us anything, but guess what? If he has one elite season, they'll say, oh, he's a quarterback whisperer. Oh, he's a guru. Oh, he turned Cade Klubnik around. And he look what he did. Remember how bad Cade Klubnik was? And he turned him around. He made him great. Boom, hire him away. You got to give me a little bit more of a body of work before I'm willing to make that decision, before I'm willing to throw that amount of resources at you. First of all, I'm putting you in a position that you've never been in before as a head coach, based off of one good season as a coordinator somewhere. No, that's a terrible decision, but it's how the game is played, right?
And
I mean, these programs are willing to spend $6, $10, $15 million to find out. That's a really expensive gamble.
It is, and I think his coaching tree has a lot to do with it as well, Diesel. Obviously, his brother, being the coach at USC, helps a lot. Garrett himself played for Mike Leach, who we all know was a fantastic coach. His last three bosses were Dabo Swinney, Sonny Dykes, and Eli Drinkwitz. So he has a strong pedigree, but I just don't know that his time of possession stats, finishing 5th in the nation at Clemson, I don't know that those statistics are enough to get him a head coaching job at a big school. I do think he's a good coordinator, but him and Klubnik, for whatever reason, have not gelled.
The big question is, can Dabo Swinney hang on to him? Can his culture outweigh Garrett Riley's desire to move up in this industry? Everybody wants to move up. Everybody wants to take on more responsibilities and bigger salaries and buy their wife a better car and all these things. They all want to do that. Question is, can Dabo make Garrett Riley happy enough to keep him at Clemson?
I say no.
That's a very interesting question, and it's going to be tough for Garrett to say no. If he has a great season, big name schools are going to come after him, and it's going to be tough to turn them down. Cole, when we come back, you mentioned a couple of these names. I want to go down the list of first-year head coaches in college football. Not necessarily first-time head coaches, but first year at their new institution. Yeah. And we're gonna do a little bust or bang, a little ball or bust with these 29 new coaches in FBS football. That's going to be on the other side right here on the Fan Upstate. There are 29 new coaches in FBS football this year. We're going to go down that list, Cole, and go ball or bust at their new schools. But first, you have some huge news if you're a Clemson Tiger basketball fan.
Absolutely. Chase Hunter, who was a massive part of their success last season, Diesel, confirms on Instagram that he's returning to Clemson for a not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, but sixth season.
Dear God.
And let's see.
How? I thought that this year we exhausted all of the COVID time, right? I thought, like,
it's unbelievable. So he says, Clemson family.
How are they doing this?
Let's run it back one more time. So Chase Hunter is returning, and that is huge, Diesel.
Yeah.
For Brad Brownell.
Yeah, there was something we didn't get a chance to get into in the last segment, Cole. It was about scholarship limits. That's part of the House versus NCAA settlement, basically the removal of restrictions. And I'm asking, what restrictions did they have? Like, there's guys who have been on these rosters for 6-7 years. You're only supposed to have 85 scholarship guys, yet Dabo in his press conferences will say, isn't it great? We put 110 guys in the game today.
Makes me feel
How
better.
How is that possible?
Makes me feel a lot better about my 5 years in college.
So, Cole, there's a lot of there has been a lot of change, as there is every year, in the coaching ranks in Division I FBS football. But I want to go down this list, Cole. We're not going to do every single one of them because, good Lord, that would be exhaustive. But we're going to talk about some of the biggest names who are in their first year at their jobs. And we're going to talk, do we think they're going to ball or bust relative to the expectations for that position? Okay, so we're going to start at the tippy top, my friend. We're going to start at Alabama with Kalen DeBoer, who takes over after Nick Saban has retired. Little info on Kalen DeBoer, 104-12 as a head football coach, which is just ridiculous.
That's not bad, right?
Not bad at all. But you remember Alabama fans were like mad, a little angry, saying, couldn't we have gotten somebody better? Like, who do you want?
Not good enough.
Like, if you're Alabama, Dabo Swinney's not good enough for you. Kalen DeBoer, not good enough for you. Who do you want? Who do you think you're gonna get that is better than Kalen DeBoer with 104-12 as a head football coach? I understand that at Washington, it was so. First of all, the argument is it was Washington, so like, who cares? It was in the Pac-12 where they don't play any defense. Give me a break, would you? I mean, the guy just wins everywhere he goes. Clearly, he knows how. But here's the thing, Cole. At Alabama, going 104-12. That's not a great story. That's the expectation. I mean, you got to be going to the playoff, winning playoff games every year. So we're only going to look at this in a 1 year window. Okay. We're not going to look at ultimately over the course of 3 to 5 years. No, 1 year window, first year. I think Kalen DeBoer is going to bust big time on those expectations. The expectations are so damned high, Cole, that I think even Nick Saban would bust relative to those expectations, right? Like, it is expected for you to make the college football playoff, win a game, and probably win the whole thing.
Yeah.
That is how high the expectations are at Alabama. So I'm not saying Kalen DeBoer is going to fail miserably. I'm just saying he's going to fail at matching the expectation at Alabama in his first year.
So I'll say this. I, number one, completely disagree. I think the best thing that could have happened to Kalen DeBoer is the 12-team playoff. 12 teams, guess what?
Yeah.
Alabama, Clemson, Oregon, they're going to get in, right? They're locks to get in. So I do believe that with DeBoer coming into Alabama at this time, with him definitely, we all know that they're going to be one of the best 12 teams. He's going to make the playoffs. I just think that Alabama's a very unique situation, Diesel, to where I'm not saying it's plug and play. I do not want to say that. However,
you're calling a lock. Kalen DeBoer takes Alabama to the playoff in year one.
Oh, 100%.
Really?
100%.
Wow.
Yeah, and they probably don't lose many games. I just think that Alabama's one of the places. Again, I'm not saying it's anybody can win there. I'm just saying the culture's so good, the talent's so good, the assistants are so good that you can go into an Alabama, plug in a Kalen DeBoer, and I think that they will be as good, if not better than they were last year.
Well, he's saying all the right things, Cole, here. We have some audio of Kalen DeBoer talking about playoff expansion and the safety net that it provides to now be in a 12-team playoff.
I don't like to think that you have a little wiggle room because more teams are in the playoffs. I don't want us thinking that way. I want us thinking about every game, the significance of it, how important it is to us, landing in a great spot, and getting a potential first round bye in the playoffs. And so that's, to me, what we'll be attacking and what we'll be working for. I don't like to think that you have a little wiggle room.
He's far too nice. He's far too nice. The press in Tuscaloosa are going to eat him alive.
I like him, man.
He's saying the right thing there. He's saying the right thing, which is it does provide us some more wiggle room. We can lose potentially one more game, but we can't think that way. So
sure,
I'm going bust. You're going ball.
Yep.
I'm not saying bust by much. I'm just saying he fails to meet that extremely high expectation. Probably the second biggest hire this year, Cole, is Mike Elko at Texas A&M. I'm going to say the expectation at A&M is always extremely high. But with Mike Elko coming in, having some experience at A&M, I'm going to say, and we're not reading this off of any magazine or anything like this, we're sort of making these expectations up as we go. 9 wins and beating Texas is the expectation at A&M. I think he balls on one of those and he busts on the other. I think he'll win 9 games at A&M. I mean, with the out-of-conference schedule, let's look that up real quick.
I got it.
Let's look at the A&M out-of-conference schedule. They probably got at least 3 wins built right in. They got Notre Dame. I know that.
McNeese.
That's a win.
Yep. Bowling Green.
Win.
And
good thing they're not playing App State again.
New Mexico State.
Win. So minimum 3 wins right there. You got to find 6 more over the course of the season. I think they hit that number. I think A&M's going to be fine. They're going to win 6 more games. Mike Elko is going to turn that program around. So I think they win 6 more games, but Texas ain't going to be one of them.
I do not know that Mike Elko is going to be the guy to get A&M to the promised land.
Yeah.
I could see him winning 9, but to your point, they do have really, really high expectations. And let's be honest, they're not beating Texas.
No.
So I don't know, while I agree with you that they win 9 games.
Always Texas's little brother.
Is that good enough, though? Is that good enough? I know it's his first year, so he'll get a few years. But you have Notre Dame, who it should be a win. They open. That's going to be a fantastic game, by the way, to open the season. They could win that game, but it's not going to be a pushover.
Jimbo Fisher, his final couple seasons there, 7 wins, 5 wins, 8 wins, 9, 8, and 9. So he won 9 games twice in his tenure. He won 8 games twice in his tenure. That he was there for 6 years. So we're asking him to essentially match Jimbo Fisher's best output, which he did achieve in his first year. I mean, A&M is one of those programs that lacks for absolutely nothing. They can go out and they had the best recruiting class ever a couple of years ago. Didn't do them a whole lot of good, right? But I think they can get to 9.
I see 8, possibly 9. Because the schedule, listen, they're in the SEC. I know everybody's got to point out that they're in the SEC. However, I do think that Notre Dame's a winnable game. McNeese, Florida, Bowling Green, Arkansas, Missouri, Mississippi State. Do you know that those are the first 7 games that I just read to you?
Wow.
Those are all winnable games for A&M. I'm not saying Mike Elko goes 7-0, but he ain't losing to Florida. They ain't losing to Missouri. I don't think they are. I don't think they're losing to Mississippi State.
And you get a lot of your toughest opponents at home.
That schedule's not brutal, man.
You get Notre Dame. Is that game going to be played in Arlington or is that going to be played in College Station?
It is in College Station.
Boom. Easy. Road game, a home game for Notre Dame. You're playing Florida on the road, but that's not saying much. Arkansas at home. Missouri at home. Mississippi State on the road. You don't have a really tough game. Until mid-October, late October at LSU.
Yeah.
Or in LSU playing at Texas A&M. Then you play South Carolina, New Mexico State, Auburn, and Texas to end the year. I love the fact that they put that game at the end of the year.
I love it.
Diesel,
I may get pushback on this, but that schedule doesn't blow me away.
No,
it doesn't.
I think it sets up very well for Texas A&M and Mike Elko in his first year. Moving on, Manny Diaz took over the head coaching job at Duke. Cole, I'm setting the expectation at Duke at 7 wins. 7. I know what you're don't think about things historically.
Yeah.
Don't think about pre-Mike Elko.
Yeah.
Think about with Mike Elko. He's 17-9 under Mike Elko.
That's pretty good for Duke.
They were abysmal before that.
Yeah.
So I got high hopes for Duke. 7 wins. Are you good with that expectation, first of all?
I don't hate it. Under Mike Elko, it felt like 7 wins was a lot.
They certainly don't want to. Manny Diaz is still one of those guys, like we were talking earlier with Garrett Riley. He's still got one of those names that people perk their ears up and they listen and think, oh, Manny Diaz, wow. I mean, he spent 2 years at Penn State. So it's not like he's, dropping down and coaching garbage programs.
No. And let's be honest, their schedules, I don't want to say it's trash, but their schedule's not brutal.
Yeah.
Elon, Northwestern, UConn, Middle Tennessee, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, Florida State. Then they have SMU, who's not good. Miami, that'll be an interesting game with Diaz. Then they have Virginia Tech and NC State and Wake Forest. So, I mean, yeah, I like 7 for Diaz. Man, I don't love Diaz, though, as a coach.
I think that Duke-Elon game is going to be 2 fan bases whose daddies all bought them their first car, and it was brand new.
Could be.
A lot of rich fan bases there. 7 wins for Duke with Manny Diaz. I'm saying they hit. I'm saying they ball out. Yeah. They hit that 7.
I'm with you.
Okay, next, Bill O'Brien. This one blew me away. I didn't even know this happened. Cole, I read this and I was like, wait, what? Who? Bill O'Brien is the new head coach at Boston College after Jeff Hafley left to become the DC for the Green Bay Packers. Bill O'Brien's from Boston. He's helmed many messy situations before. Think Penn State, think Houston. I think the only expectation at Boston College is don't embarrass us. I mean, I'm not even going to put a win-loss. I'm not even going to put a win-loss on this one. Don't embarrass us.
Oh, that's bad. But you're right.
But Bill O'Brien, he's not, immune. He's not a Boy Scout. He's had some issues. I think Bill's going to do well in Boston College. I don't think he's going to be there for long. I think he's probably telling his agent, first bus out of here. Sure. Please get me out of here.
OC job or something, right?
Yeah, something like that. But with the expectation of don't embarrass us, I think Bill's going to do fine with that.
And that is I hate to say that, but it's not far off. They're not a program really that has any expectations at all. So I honestly feel like Diesel were Boston College being able to get Bill O'Brien. I feel like that's huge. Like they haven't had big coaches like that. Bill O'Brien's coached the NFL,
needs it. Good God, the ACC needs big names to actually come in and hit. I remember there was a cycle circa like 2016, 2017, when the ACC felt like they were getting all the hot names to come and coach there, and almost every single one of them fell on their faces. I mean, it was Bronco Mendenhall. It was the guy who took over at Virginia Tech. He was at Memphis prior to that, whose name escapes me. I mean, these were all hot names that everybody wanted. Okay, moving on. Jedd Fisch, Washington, 10-3 at Arizona in 2023. I mean, he's coming into a program riding high, but he's also going into the Big Ten. I think the expectation is going to be college football playoff, which is probably, we'll see what that number is going to be. Probably 10 wins. 10 wins gets you into the college football playoff, 9 for a lot of schools. I don't think Jedd Fisch is going to get you there. I don't think, not in his first year. I think he's going to take a step back at Washington. He was struggling in his first year at Arizona. I think Washington's going to have some struggles as well, even though, again, a program that's coming in riding high. But with all these changes, I see them taking a fairly substantial step back.
So I hear you.
Bust.
However, Diesel, the X factor here is their schedule, right? Now, on the back end of the schedule, they do play Oregon, USC, and UCLA at the back end. But the front end,
they're all used to playing those schools.
Right. And the front end, as well as I do, that the Northwesterns and Rutgers, I mean, they have Michigan, but I mean, there are, with the 12-team playoff, with the expansion, again, I'm not saying everybody's going to make the 12-team playoff, but Washington's going to be a team that I do think has a legitimate shot. But without DeBoer, are they going to be able to get past the USCs and the Michigans, who, by the way, Michigan also has a brand new coach?
And so year one, I'm going 8-5 for Jed Fish at Washington. Kurt Cignetti at Indiana. His expectation is probably just going to be make a bowl game. He was elite at James Madison, but Sunbelt coaches don't necessarily have a great track record when they move up to power schools. Scott Satterfield, Neil Brown for a couple of years. Now he seems to be turning things around at West Virginia a little bit. But they both struggled when they made their way into power programs. I think Cignetti, with just the expectation of win 6, I think he's going to ball on that six win expectation.
Sure, I agree. No pushback there.
Some other big notable names, and I know we're running out of time here, Cole. Willie Fritz took over at Houston. Bronco Mendenhall is now at New Mexico. Ken Nui-Matalolo at San Jose State. Deshaun Foster, former running back for the UCLA Bruins, is stepping up as the head coach. Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State. Spencer Danielson, Boise State. Jonathan Smith, Michigan State. John Summerall takes over at Tulane. Sharon Moore at Michigan. That's an interesting one.
That's the one that I thought that would be on the list as well.
Yeah.
That is one that I am interested to see as much as any of them, because you talk about expectations.
Can you continue the culture that Jim Harbaugh built?
Sure. And who else has to come into a job where they just won the national championship? This is a phenomenal coach.
He said the right things last year when Harbaugh was out. You know, it was a little weird. I found it a little creepy, that sort of cult of personality that Harbaugh had going there at Michigan. But hey, you know, people don't necessarily have to agree with it for it to be successful.
They don't. I think it's a good hire. I like Sharon Moore. I think he's going to do good things at Michigan. But man, you talk about stepping into a place with high expectations with DeBoer. There's a lot of question marks.
Is this the situation that's going to put Ohio State back on top in that rivalry?
And there's a lot of question marks, not in terms of if he can do the job, but if he can keep Michigan at the height of national relevance. That's what's going to be fascinating.
Brent Brennan takes over at Arizona. Bob Chesney at James Madison. Major Applewhite, South Alabama. Sean Lewis, San Diego State. Brian Vincent, UL Monroe. Pete Lembo takes over at Buffalo. Jeff Chody at Nevada. Jay Wavell takes over at Wyoming. Scotty Walden, UTEP. Fran Brown takes over at Syracuse. And Trent Bray moves over to Oregon State. Excuse me, I missed a couple. Gerard Parker, Troy. Derek Mason. Derek Mason is taking over at Middle Tennessee State. Tony Sanchez, New Mexico State.
All right, coming up in the very next segment, we are going to talk to one of the guests that we'll have on this program that I foreshadow being one of my all-time favorites. She is Disha Thosar of Fox Sports, MLB reporter and columnist. You can follow her on Twitter at Disha Thosar. That's DeeShaThosar. She covers the MLB and does a tremendous job for Fox Sports. We'll talk to her in the very next segment. Get your baseball questions in right here on The Fan Upstate. We talked Atlanta Braves in hour number one, and if you have any Braves or baseball questions, MLB questions, go ahead and get those questions in right now because we do want to bring in Disha Thosar. Disha is a reporter and columnist for Fox Sports MLB. Disha, we appreciate you hopping on Wire to Wire for the very first time. How are you?
Of course, I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
We love talking baseball. Obviously, we're in Braves country here in South Carolina, but I want to ask, as we are now almost halfway through the MLB season, is there anything that surprises you anymore about seeing injuries, not only for the Braves like Spencer Strider and Ronald Acuna Jr., who just went down, but especially on the Tommy John front? It seems like numbers continue to rise. As a reporter and a columnist, is this something that you've just become accustomed to?
I wish, but I definitely still think injuries are the worst. I'm not hoping for them, and I'm certainly not expecting them. So it is a little surprising, I guess, especially with the Tommy John surgeries really piling up lately. That one is getting a little less and less surprising, but it is a big issue. And I think until some of these injuries and the way they are starting to occur are addressed, I think it's always going to be surprising. Less so for kind of freak injuries like the Acuna one, with him just kind of running back and forth on the bases. I mean, they're still so brutal whenever they happen to the stars of the game. And I'm never expecting it to happen to someone like Acuna, Strider. Of course, a guy like DeGrom is still on the injured list with his second career Tommy John surgery. So it's an issue, and I think if we become less surprised, that's not a good thing. I think we have to keep paying attention and keep trying to get some answers.
Disha, this is Diesel here. Thanks for joining us on the show for the very first time. Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. To that point, to the Tommy John, I've argued that specialization from a younger and younger age, travel ball being a huge part of it. The guys never really give their different body parts a chance to rest and heal. There's no such thing as an off season anymore. I look at that as being a major culprit. Does Major League Baseball kind of feel the same way? I know I'm sure there's studies into kind of what are the causes of this, why we're seeing an increase in that, but am I on the right track or am I, completely in the wrong ballpark?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you as far as it goes with the youth movement. I think a lot of these young pitchers in middle school, high school, they are obsessed with watching the game and seeing these guys throw triple digits, and it looks impressive. The pitchers are hyped after doing it. Really, there's no reason sort of not to. Even now we're seeing the A's closer Mason Miller, who looks phenomenal throwing 101 fastballs. So really, I think the trend starts with the fascination of being able to do it. And if young arms, I saw a study of research recently in that they're still developing straight into their early 20s. And if young pitchers are starting to trying to get to 100 in middle school and high school, it's just not the right time. And I think MLB, as far as what they think, they've kind of just turned down theories. There's a lot of pitchers in the majors who think the culprit is the pitch clock. Now that they have to work faster, they're getting injured more. There's also another theory of the sticky stuff. Now that that's banned, the pitchers have to work harder to generate velocity. I think in the end, it is a mix of all of these reasons. It's hard for me to believe they're not all connected, but I think really the biggest issue has to start with this youth movement and trying to kind of get away from the game being just 100-mile-per-hour fastballs. And there's pitchers who are really successful, guys like Zach Wheeler, who don't throw all the way up there. They'll top out at 95, 97, and they have long careers. So I think really it has to be changed, of course, starting from the minor leagues, but even before that, just when scouts are trying to pick these guys from high school.
I look at everything like it's a pendulum. Players have learned to throw faster, and it's cool to throw faster, so then everybody's throwing faster. But then hitters get better and better and better, and they catch up to that. Do you foresee a day when across the board pitchers strategically are learning to essentially throw slower but with better control and placement, and that defeats players who all they know how to do is hit 100-mile-an-hour fastballs?
Yeah, I think so. And then that's why I mentioned guys like Zach Wheeler, even Aaron Nola, and they are on the older side of younger pitchers coming up, and they've been established in a way. They've been doing it for 15 years now. So it is different now, even from the way that these pitchers are being taught. But I think it's kind of twofold, because even pitchers in the minor leagues, they're almost expecting Tommy Johns now, and sort of that return rate of a year and a half. And then, okay, get right back in it. At least they got their one Tommy John out of the way, and then they'll kind of be free to hit the 100-mile-per-hour again. And I think that is the problem. I think it's so commonplace, this surgery, that it's just kind of a hurdle that you have to accept and get over. And I think that pitchers should start to be a little scared of the surgery and injuries in general. It shouldn't be so welcomed in baseball. And I think that's really the only thing that will get this sport to change. It can't be some surgery that you just will accept will happen at some point in your life. It has to be something you're still trying to avoid.
Disha Thosar of Fox Sports joining us on Wire to Wire. She is a MLB reporter and columnist for Fox Sports MLB. Disha, we talked last week, and we did not know this news would break today, but it's great that it did with you being on our program, because I want to get your opinion. But a historic day for the MLB, as they are officially incorporating Negro League statistics of more than 2,300 players, something that, in my opinion, is long overdue. What are your thoughts on what this means for the MLB?
Yeah, I think it's great. And it's been a long time coming. I'm glad that this has been not just sort of a singular decision by MLB. They really worked with the Negro Leagues advocates and the community that they have, and kind of formed a good time and a good solution. I think one thing to be aware of is sort of the language that's being used. I still don't know that I agree with all of these Negro League stats just being completely incorporated into MLB, because that to me tells me they're a little bit trying to change history. If we look 100 years from now, the Negro League stats and MLB are just going to be together. And that's not what happened. MLB actively had put up an iron curtain to make sure that these players were not allowed to play. So I think it is a little bit semantics overall. Of course, this is a net positive, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. I think this is long overdue again, and it was something that needed to happen a long time ago. But it shouldn't be something that just allows sort of history to be changed. And I don't think it necessarily will. Of course, there are still a lot of advocates to say, like, these stats happened. It could be the major league stats, and that's all encompassing rather than just MLB as an entity, because the Negro Leagues were extremely successful, exciting. They were their own thing. So I'm not necessarily agreeing with kind of just erasing that whole part of it and just incorporating those stats into MLB. I think there has to be sort of just a little bit better language in how we talk about it. But of course, overall, this is great, and I love that it happened.
Disha, do you think when we talk about these Negro League statistics being incorporated, do you think that our conversations and discussions over the past, 50 to 100 years would be different when you're talking about former baseball players who were predominantly white and Caucasian, if the outlook or the look on baseball's past would be different? Because the reality of it is there are a lot of these players who played in these leagues that were phenomenal baseball players.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think if this had started earlier, then right now we'd be talking about it way differently than we would have been maybe if the Negro Leagues were incorporated as MLB stats maybe 50 years ago. But really what happened all these years ago was that even guys like Jackie Robinson, they just were not allowed to even enter MLB until really the end of their careers. And even when they did enter at the end of their careers, they dominated. So I think that's kind of the gray area there of what we won't really know. It's hard to just incorporate all the stats and pretend like they were in MLB this whole time. And I think that's why it's important. I mean, even just to bring it up, I think as long as people are aware of sort of this discrepancy and MLB's history, and it's great that they're trying to right this wrong, but they can't also just forget and erase that it ever happened. And that's sort of the danger of just the language that we use when we talk about it.
Disha, you talked there about combining these leagues and maybe changing the nomenclature around it. We all know that the NFL is actively working towards international franchises in the UK and Germany and other countries. Do you believe that it would be feasible for Major League Baseball to either do the same thing in the same way via expansion, or to form alliances with other international leagues, like Japan, like Korea? I mean, we've seen Japan obviously be elite in international play over the past couple of years. Do you see Major League Baseball wanting to grow in a similar way?
I'm sure they want to, but it is very hard. I mean, you go internationally, and my family is from India. They're obsessed with cricket over there. It's just harder for baseball to catch on that way internationally. And I think the problem with being able to integrate it straight away and just incorporate it into this one sort of major league, how they are calling it pro football instead of NFL just for football, is they play differently everywhere. There's a lot of differences. Even in Japan, there's a different mound height. There's a different baseball tackiness. I think in order for it just to be fully incorporated, baseball would have to be extremely standardized. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. And of course, that would be a major challenge to even get to that point. I think it's a lofty goal. There's no problem with trying to get the world more interested in baseball. I think that's why we saw the success of the World Baseball Classic and things like that help. But it'll have to keep going, I think, for a while before we can reach sort of that point with baseball.
You can follow her on Twitter at Disha Thosar. That's Thosar, spelling Thosar for you. Give her a follow. Let her know that you heard her on Wire to Wire. Disha, you cover the Mets, and with this area, South Carolina being Braves country as it is, the Mets, Nationals, Phillies, Braves are obviously talked about a good bit. Is there a franchise, in your opinion, that has more pressure on them to turn it around than David Stearns and the Mets do? Because it seems like the people who do love the Mets, Disha, they are absolutely fed up and have been for a while now.
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to pinpoint any franchise besides the Mets. I mean, maybe the Angels and the A's and can be thrown in there, but even then, I think their situations are just so different. They haven't made huge changes to the organization top to bottom the way that the Mets have, and especially with all of the resources they have now, thanks to Steve Cohen and his wallet. That he created the pressure himself. And he knew that when he took over the team, and he put out even lofty expectations for the club, that he did make mistakes that way. I mean, I think he could have started with lower expectations, and then there wouldn't have been as much pressure, and fans are really just losing it. I mean, this is the first time I've heard from people who have watched the Mets for 40 years who just are stepping out and enjoying summer now. They can't even watch the games. They're not going to the ballpark. And right now, we just saw, a few minutes before this call, Edwin Diaz was placed on the injured list with a shoulder impingement, so he might be out for a couple months. And then in the first inning, Pete Alonso was hit by a pitch on his hand. So really the bad news, just once it goes, it's pouring. And they're really going to need sweeping changes and really a buy-in from a fan base that is completely fed up and just wants to see them win. So, no, I guess to answer your question, I don't see another franchise with more pressure than the Mets that have to just get to a championship yesterday.
Disha, are there any other teams that have records similar to the Braves around that 30-win mark who you see as having such an injury bug right now as compared to the Atlanta Braves, who obviously lost Austin Riley for a good amount of time, Sean Murphy for a good amount of time, Spencer Strider and Acuna are both out for the season? Like, how impressive is it to you that the Braves are still sitting there at second in the division with more than 30 wins and having so many guys out?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a huge testament to the organization and the trust that they've formed throughout the industry, and not even just in Braves country, but sort of throughout the league. It's just assumed that, okay, well, they suffered their ace is out, their MVP is out, but they're still in it. And that only happens because of these recent years. And of course, winning the division all these consecutive years helps. What Alex Anthopoulos has done helps. It goes from all the way top to bottom. And especially after Acuna went down in 2021, the way that they were able to overcome it, of course, with huge trade deadline moves. I'm expecting the front office to do that again. And who knows if they can kind of catch lightning in a bottle for a second time. I think that's tough. But yeah, to your point, there really is no other team in the league, maybe besides the Astros, who also really struggled to get, even now they've started to play better, but they're certainly still behind. They're not in first place in the AL West, and they need to make up ground. But they're another team that had struggled with injuries in the pitching staff to start the season, and there was still this expectation that they'll be in it. They're not going anywhere by the time September rolls around. And it's the same thing with the Braves. The Astros get away with that because of their recent history and their track record of getting into the playoffs all these consecutive years. So it definitely helps. I think recency bias is alive and well, but more than that, the Braves have shown that they can conquer these sorts of challenges and injuries and still be able to be competitive.
Disha, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You've got 33,000 followers on Twitter, an impressive number. You don't get there without ruffling some feathers and probably getting a lot of interaction, positive and negative, in your mentions. What fan base takes over your mentions most in a positive way, and what fan base takes over most in a negative way?
That is a great question. It's funny because I definitely ruffled feathers within the Mets while I covered them for 4 years on the beat. But I was ruffling feathers more so for ownership and the front office, really just calling them out on their really ridiculous moves. So this was going to be surprising, but the most positive fan base for me is the Mets, because I think I've gotten some kind of good loyalty there just based on my previous reporting. And so far, the worst fan base has been just the Yankees, because that's a fan base that can't seem to handle any sort of criticism or negativity. Of course, this year, there's been very little, almost none of that. But last year and the year before it, they really struggled. And when they were called out for not making the playoffs last year, Yankees fans, of course, knew the reasons, but it was harder for them to accept it the way that a Mets fan base is just used to losing. Yankees are not. So, yeah, I'm dealing with sort of a dichotomy in New York fan bases right now.
Disha, the most important question that any of our listeners or Diesel and I could ask you is, covering the Mets and obviously being on the beat and now covering MLB in its totality, have you met Frank the Tank yet?
I've not personally met him, but I've definitely seen him around the ballpark.
Or heard him, right?
Yeah, exactly. Heard him, seen him, all of it.
We appreciate you hopping on with us. Fantastic stuff. I love following you on Twitter. You do great work, and we hope to talk to you again real soon.
Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
That's Disha Thosar, Fox Sports. She is a MLB reporter and columnist. Fantastic stuff. As Diesel said earlier, give her a follow. Trey's already said on the stream, Diesel. Yep. So impressed with Disha. She's awesome. Fantastic follow on Twitter.
Yeah, at Disha, Deesha, Thosar, Thosar. I put it in the comment for those of you who are watching on the stream. Find her account, give her a follow, push her past the 34,000 mark. I have no doubt, Cole, that she is going to hit that number very soon.
Yeah.
And that's a huge number, man. You don't realize just how hard it is to reach 1,000 followers on Twitter, or 5,000 followers, or 10,000 followers on Twitter, and she's blowing up covering all of Major League Baseball. Believe it or not, Cole, it's easier, in my mind, it's easier to blow up an account, get bigger if you cover just one team as opposed to all teams. Because you can really get into the weeds and you can become the voice for a particular team. So it's really impressive what she's accomplished. Again, Disha Thosar, look her up on Twitter, give her a follow. When we come back, Cole, what NIL item, if you were 17 years old,
oh boy,
and you were, 6'5", 230 pounds, being recruited at some big schools, what NIL item could be offered to you to put you over the top and making your final decision? Well, we got the answer, at least from one recruit who is pretty hot on Texas. We'll tell you what they offered him, and we'll talk about it ourselves next, right here on the Fan Upstate 97.7 FM in Greenville, 97.1 FM in Spartanburg, and everywhere you are on the free Odyssey app. Cole, I've always said that I can absolutely be bought. And then we're all whores in this business, right? We all will go wherever the money is. Whoever's paying us the most, whoever's check clears, we'll go out and do your remote.
True.
We'll be at your business.
True.
That's what we do. We're here to please. We're here to make money. But Cole, it's getting out of hand in the name, image, and likeness business. These players are whoring themselves out for exorbitant amounts of cash. And now 5-star wide receiver Jamie French has named his price for his dream NIL deal.
Ooh.
Texas in the driver's seat for his recruitment. That doesn't necessarily mean that Texas is going to give him what he wants. But if he's a 5-star, they'd probably be stupid not to. His price, Cole, is a Lamborghini. A Lambo. That's what he wants.
Okay.
To sign whoever can give him a Lambo. I mean, like, what? A Lambo's what? $275,000, $300,000?
A brand new Lamborghini
Lambo
starts at $237,000.
Okay. So you can get him a cheap Lambo. He'll probably say, no, I don't want that one. I want a
high-end
Lambo. What is that? Probably like $700,000?
Yeah, more along the $600,000-$700,000.
I mean, Jaden Rashada was offered $14.5 million, right? So it seems like at this point, a Lamborghini is a cheap, low-cost NIL deal.
Yeah.
Buy him one for every day of the week.
Yeah.
Why don't you? So, I mean, a Lambo, that's a nice car.
You think?
Would you want, I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like to be 18 years old and to have that much power under my right foot. That's absurd, right?
Yeah.
Better hope that whatever campus he's on has got freshly paved roads, because you're not going to be able to drive that thing on a campus with a bunch of speed bumps.
I mean, even 17, 18 years old, even me today. And I have a little bit too much of the lead foot, right?
Yeah.
I can't imagine me behind a.
I mean, you hear all those
Lambo.
great stories, Cole, of like rock bands in the 70s and the 80s who had crazy riders. Like, they would want a fishbowl full of only brown M&Ms. That means somebody had to go out and buy a bunch of M&Ms, and then they had to spend a lot of time to sort the M&Ms. Now you could just buy a bag of brown M&Ms only on Amazon. Like that's cheating, But like, if I was getting an NIL deal and I was able to name my price, because I'm a 5-star guy, I would want something that's a little harder to find, right? Like, it's easy to go down to your local Lambo dealership, put $300K on the table, or strike a deal with the dealership so that you don't actually have to pay for the car.
Yeah.
But I would want something that's a little more rare, right? I wouldn't want a brand new 2024 Lambo. I would want a classic car. I would make them do some work to find it.
I agree with you on the classic car. However, let me ask you this. If you're a 17, 18-year-old kid wanting an NIL deal.
You probably don't understand what a classic car is.
Well, you don't, for one. But I guess the other part of it is you don't understand that, even though a Lambo, while it's worth a lot of money, even though a nice classic car, while it's worth a lot of money, cars do not do anything except for depreciate in value unless we're talking
you got the right classic car.
That's right. However, if I'm a 17, 18-year-old kid, I would much rather have cash that I can use and go to an investor or a financial advisor that sets me up for life. I don't care if I drive a Toyota 4Runner.
But here's the thing, Cole, is you're thinking about this from the perspective of 26-year-old Cole, who's got life experiences, who knows how to make proper decisions. But I'm asking you to put yourself in the mindset. I want you Tolos watching on the stream and listening to text in as well. 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. If 17-year-old you was able to name the price for your recruitment, one item only, what would you want for it? If you're smart, you're asking for a house, right? That goes up, that appreciates in value most of the time. If you're smart, you're asking for a classic, like a 1964 Lambo. I'm making this number up, right?
Sure.
A 59 Lambo, a 68 Lambo, something like that. Something that's just nuts to actually own. That's what I want, because that's going to appreciate in value. But 17-year-old me, Cole, would 1,000% have been bought by a car.
I probably would have to.
Right?
I probably would have to.
You know what? I think you know what the price would be, because I think 17-year-old me was into this. I would want the Smokey and the Bandit Trans Am.
That's a good one. I've told you before. I'm a John Wick Mustang guy, so that's my lover of a car.
Because when I was 17, when I was in high school, Cole, I was driving a Camaro. It wasn't a great Camaro. It was a 1989 Camaro. So what? Third gen, fourth gen. A lot of people thought the fourth gen Camaros were crap. I thought the car was badass. It wasn't. It was slow. I 1,000% would have been bought by a fast car.
844 fan phone. Gary wants to chime in on the renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone. What's up, Gary?
Hey, thank you guys. I just wanted, about the Trans Am for Smokey and the Bandit. I graduated in '78, and our head jock on the team, on the football team, had one of those cars.
Nice.
And it was a nice car.
Nice.
But anyway, remember Primetime's son, who I've been following Prime since high school. He's my man, Florida State. Two sports in Atlanta, baseball and football. But his son had a Maybach. And I don't know much about them, but I guarantee you they're fast.
Yeah.
Probably so, Gary. Hey, thanks for the call, man. We appreciate you.
And Gary, I didn't know anything about fast cars when I was coming out of high school. The only thing I knew were the ones that were on the posters that I got 10 years prior to that in the Scholastic book fairs, right?
That's true.
God, I'm imagining myself now at 17 years old with a classic Lamborghini Countach. Get out of here. You probably don't even know what that is.
Donovan Owen says he can have the Lambo, but how is he going to afford the insurance?
If he's got no money to go with it.
I like it.
You're right.
That's true.
You're right, Donovan.
I'd take the money, but you're right. 17-year-old me, Diesel, you don't think the same when you're 17 as you do when you're in your 30s or 40s, right?
Yeah.
All right. Coming up next, it's the most interacted with segment on this very radio station. It is the 5 o'clock fight next. 189 people watching Wire to Wire live in the stream. We're live every single day.
Let's pump those numbers up.
Heck yeah, we're live every single day on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Not only can you listen to Wire, but you can watch us every day. Let's get like Diesel said, let's get this thing over 200. If you're watching right now, share it, retweet it, subscribe, whatever you have to do. Let's get it over 200 before the show ends.
Now, Texter, you're wrong for this, okay? So last segment we were talking about the player who is being recruited. His name is Jamie French, 5-star wide receiver. His NIL request is a Lamborghini.
Mhm.
He says, if somebody buys me a Lamborghini, I will sign. Texas seems to be in the driver's seat for that. I asked you, what would 17-year-old you agree in a heartbeat? I'll sign wherever you want me to if this is what they offered you. And Texter, you are wrong for this. Says, I'm asking for an all-expenses paid trip to the nicest private nude beach with Scarlett Johansson. She's a married woman.
Was he wrong?
She's a married woman. And you're asking for prostitution.
Well, I think he said if he was 7. Well,
You're asking for her to prostitute herself. Come on, man. How it still baffles me, Cole, to know that she's married to Colin Jost from Saturday Night Live.
yeah, it's true.
What? How did that guy?
Hey, Texter from the 417's just shooting a shot.
How did that guy get Scarlett? How did that guy even meet Scarlett Johansson?
It's true, though.
That's what I want to know.
Very, very good question.
Smart, though. It's really smart to go for the actress that people know and not just the Instagram thought who's going to be replaced in 2 weeks anyway. Smart decision.
All right, every single day at 5 o'clock, we debate.
No, that's the wrong one.
What'd I say?
Ding. I said buzz.
Oh,
Man. Wow. Put me in the clink.
Dang.
How did I do that? I didn't even think. I didn't even hesitate.
I
I
like
just
it.
did
Diesel.
it.
All right, let's get this thing started. So if this is your first time listening, and I know that we have a good many first-time Tolos in the stream and out there today because we've already heard from several that said, today's my first time listening to Wire to Wire. Number one, we appreciate you listening. Number two, I want to let you know the 5 o'clock fight. Diesel and I, every day that we're together, we fight it out. We have 3 topics. You, the Tolo, which stands for turn it on, leave it on. You decide who wins and who loses. Several ways to get in touch with the show. You can text us 71307. Start your text with the word fan. We're also on Twitter or X at @DColeBryson. Diesel is at Diesel on radio. Let us know there. And then if you're watching on the stream, put it in the comments. It is time for fight. All right, Diesel, this happened to me yesterday in this very building, okay? You are in the bathroom and you're at work or in a public place and you're going to do your business. You're sitting down. So that implies that you're going number 2, right? Do you like it? Or let me rephrase that because that sounds weird. Who ordered this question? Did you do this? Is it okay with you when someone starts talking to you from next door, or is it way too awkward when somebody starts talking to you?
If this is somebody's first time listening to the show, it might be their last time listening to the show with questions like this. Dude, that is so far off sides. It's gross. Don't talk to me while I'm doing that. Don't try to, look, we work in a small building. There's not a lot of people who are here on a daily basis. You can kind of recognize people by their shoes, even by the way they breathe.
Yeah.
But that is so gross. It's so disgusting. And it happens far too often in this building. People will just say, hey, what are you talking about on the show today? Hey, I heard you did. Like, no. Well, mind your own damn business. That wall between us might as well be a soundproof wall. Do not speak to me while that's happening.
I would usually agree. However, I can't because yesterday I had a full-on conversation sitting right next door to who was it? I forgot already. Somebody down the hall yesterday. And Stone Man. Stone Man and I had a nice conversation about the weekend. And you know what the best part of it was We never saw each other's face. We never once saw each other.
It's disgusting. Number one, when you smell the poo, it means that particles that came out of someone else's backside are now in your nostrils.
What about when you're talking to the guy next door, but you have to quit talking to continue to, to get the rest out,
Yeah. If somebody strains,
yes.
If I hear a kerplunk, conversation over, bro. Conversation. It's so gross. So disgusting.
Oh, gosh.
You know what? Next time that happens, and it will happen again soon, I'm just going to straight ignore them.
Oh, you're not going to talk to him?
I'm not going to talk to him. You want to talk to me? Come to my office after you do what you do and wash your damn hands.
Come to my office after you get done using the bathroom.
My office is 20 paces away from the bathroom. My office is not in that stall.
That's hilarious. I have to know, what do you Tolos, you listeners, what do you think? Is that unacceptable or acceptable to have that conversation?
I am going to give you one piece of truth here about me, and this is probably illegal.
Oh,
Cole,
that's not good.
I always use the handicap stall if I got to go at work.
Always. See, I always use the opposite.
We don't have anybody who's handicapped who works here at the moment, so I'm not potentially, taking a stall away from anyone. So, but I like the space, man. I like having some room.
Yeah.
I don't like feeling claustrophobic while this is happening.
No, I usually go to the next one down. I don't know why, but it is my normal one. So, anyways, that now we're off to a great start.
So you choose the one in
fight.
the middle so that you can be bookmarked on
Sure.
either end.
Absolutely.
Wrong.
I'm stuck in the middle. All right, let us know who won round one. Diesel says, heck no, don't have a conversation with me while I'm using the bathroom. I say, well, I just did it yesterday. How about 4? Diesel. I
asked
proposed this question, so let's hear it.
So I'm watching the show Fallout right now. I don't know if you've seen it. It's based on a post-apocalyptic video game, right? If given the choice, Cole, and there's no radiation on the surface, would you rather live in the vault, which is like an underground community? There's security, but you don't ever get to go outside, and your life is dictated by very strict rules. Or would you rather live outside the vault, where you're living in a harsh world, you're on your own, but you're free to do whatever it is you want to do?
So this one's interesting. I have not yet thought about this. So I will tell you, I'm not a fan of rules. I don't love rules in life. So I would actually go outside where I'm free, where I can roam. Yeah, it may be tough, right? A little bit of harsh world, but the boy named Sue was able to do it, so I think I could do it too. Don't stick me in some vault where I'm stuck and have all these rules I have to follow. By the way, I have not seen the show. Is it good?
It's good so far. I'm only a couple of episodes deep. Okay. But it is a harsh place, my friend, and people are out there getting 86d in a heartbeat. Everywhere you turn, it's a rough show, man.
86th.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for freedom, but when you're dodging, radioactive bears and huge pond monsters. You know what? I think I might take the security and the nerdiness of living inside the vault. Everybody in there is clean. You got food. You got drinking water. Sure, you live in a tin can. But, I mean, I think all of that outweighs dodging monsters all the time.
All right. I hear you. I have to watch it. I like movies or shows where there's a lot of 86s. I like that. I really do. I know that's terrible and not wholesome, but
it's definitely not a wholesome show.
It's not. All right, let us know who won round 2. If you're stuck in the middle, well, good news. We have
final round. Fight.
Diesel, you also asked this question, and you said you brought to the table stuffed crust pizza or garlic butter drizzled crust. You can only have one. Now, clarify for me the stuffed crust with cheese on the inside.
Cheese on the inside, but it's otherwise plain on the outside.
And the garlic butter is just a plain nothing on the inside.
You could have it. You could have it. Washed with whatever you want. If you want the sriracha honey sauce on the crust, that's fine. Basically, it's stuffed crust pizza or the fancy crust pizza that's drizzled with whatever you want.
Gotcha.
Like the field.
Okay, so
Stuffed crust or the field.
you go first. Stuffed crust pizza or garlic butter drizzled, nothing on the inside.
I'm going with the flavored crust. So the garlic butter.
Gotcha.
I love that, man. Like let it soak in, let that crust get a little bit softer. You know, it's got a lot more flavor to it. I mean, I've had stuffed crust pizza plenty of times.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, like they haven't figured out that you can both stuff it and flavor it. They just stuff it with mozzarella cheese. It could be better if you did both, but if I can only have one, give me the flavored drizzled crust any day of the week.
I love cheese, and the more cheese, the better. Now, that may not allow me to go back to round one and have that conversation quite as much, right? However, I'm a stuffed crust guy. I love stuffed cheese inside the crust. I'm weird. The crust is my favorite part of the pizza, and if it's stuffed with cheese, sign me up. I'm all in. So I will go stuffed crust on the pizza. Let us know who wins each round, who wins the fight today. And if you want to suggest a fight topic, you can do so by emailing Diesel.
What do you want Diesel and Bryson to fight about next?
If you've got an ass, I'll kick it.
Submit your topics to Diesel at thefanupstate.com. Subject line.
Wire to wires.
On the Fan Upstate.
Yeah, the obvious answer, Cole, is to stuff your crust with cheese
He was
and then
talking
drizzle
about-
it with
Let me look.
garlic butter, whatever
Fallout.
flavor it is you want to put on top.
Fallout.
But like I said, they hadn't quite figured that out. Going to get to some of your messages. They're rolling in fast here on this, the most interacted with feature on this radio station. Texter says, let's see here, excuse me, Spur Daddy says Diesel wins round one. Cole wins round two. We haven't yet heard from Spur.
Spur,
On
let
his
us know.
round three. So we are anticipating your response. Let's see here. Nolan Ryan says, Diesel, if you're familiar with the Fallout lore, you would know that the vaults are bleeped up places and all of them have weird experiments going on. Well, Nolan, I didn't know that. I'm only a couple episodes deep into the show.
Hey, and we had a caller literally call in and say or ask Diesel what the name of the show was that you were talking about. So evidently you sparked some interest there.
Excellent. I think it's a good show so far. Again, I'm only a couple episodes in. All these shows always take a weird turn at some point.
They do.
Nolan says round three is a push. Deep dish pizza sucks. It's literally with lasagna.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
Nolan,
true.
we didn't ask about deep dish pizza, but hey, we appreciate your thoughts regardless.
Yeah, we don't mean deep dish. We just mean the crust has cheese in it.
Yes,
I'm not a deep
just,
dish
just
guy.
cheesy stuffed crust pizza. Shane Barrett says Diesel wins round one. Cole wins round two. Diesel wins round three.
Oh,
Thank
come
you,
on,
Shane.
Shane. Texter from the 203 Diesel says regarding round one and talking stall to stall. Texter from the 203 says only time that's acceptable is when it's your boy. So if you're boys, if you know each other, I don't know. I guess it would be awkward if it was somebody you never met before. Texter says, I don't want anyone talking to me while using the facilities. I like the first Austin Powers movie. Or like the first Austin Powers movie. I'm sorry about that.
I don't remember that scene, Texter. I know I've seen the first Austin Powers movie. I mean, who doesn't love the character, the bombshell, a lot of vagina? I love that character.
Never seen it.
Wow.
Texter from the 977 says, I was absolutely lighting it up one day at a gas station, and the guy next to me also started lighting it up, and we both started dying laughing.
Nah, dude, I can't do that with somebody else in the room, especially if it's a coworker. Like, you know, when you get when it gets harsh, when you're in deep trouble.
Deep what?
You sit down, you're in deep something, and somebody else comes into the room. It's like, oh no, I gotta clench, I gotta hold it. I can't do this with somebody else in the room.
Texter from the 549. Statistically speaking, the handicap is the most used and the one closer to the urinal is the least used. Well, Texter, my question to you is, do you research statistics on what urinals are used the most?
Yeah,
I mean, come on now.
What website did you go to Google that? Well,
That is
Google, but
great.
you know.
All right, let's see. Texter from the 344 says Diesel wins round two because he just dropped an 86, which is a restaurant term, which is true.
It's true.
It is. Texter, let's see. 593 says stuffed crust. Something about the cheese hits different. What's the name? What's the point in extra calories if you can't taste it? Diesel wins clean sweep from the 357. Are you kidding me? Let's see. Texter from the 441 says Diesel wins round 1 and Cole gets 2 and 3 finally. And then the 380 says poop in peace. All right, one more. Texter from the 417. At the QT in Greer, a man had his daughter on speakerphone praying for her out loud while dropping the most massive deuce and making straining noises. There's no way. There's no way that's true,
man,
right?
It weirds me out every time people are on their phones while they're doing it. Look, I know we all take our phones into the bathroom. We shouldn't because it's gross, it's disgusting, and not nearly enough people wipe down their phones. We don't sanitize our phones as much as we should. By the way, could you pass me one of those Clorox wipes? I mean, doing it like people who are watching videos or on the phone on speakerphone while they're doing it, that's friggin' gross. And y'all need Jesus.
Well, I don't think people realize like the germs get on the phone and then you touch the phone a million times a day.
Exactly. That means that stuff is all over your hands.
Amazon guy says for Fallout to be a game adaptation, they did an all right job. What's he mean by that?
It's a video game adaptation, and it's a game series. So again, I don't know who somebody brought it up. The lore. I mean, it's a multi-game series, so there's a lot to it. How do you condense all of that down into one show with whatever it is, 8 or 9 episodes?
Yeah,
that's tough, man. That's really tough to do.
Texter from the 865 says, "Hey, can you spare a square?"
I do not have a square to spare, Texter.
Jeez. And then to Tom Arnold's character that you were talking about a minute ago, he said Tom Arnold's character was in the stall beside Austin Powers, who was being ambushed by Dr. Evil.
I do remember this. Yeah, he's like, grab a hold, man, and let it rip. We'll get through this together.
Grip it and rip it, right?
Yeah, grip it and rip it.
Oh, you said earlier that Spur Daddy was torn. Well,
yes,
you got the win. I hate to tell you.
Yes, thank you, Spur Daddy. Feels
How
good.
many people do you pay off? How do you have any money left?
I don't have any money, man.
You're paying off everybody.
I'm just giving away free garlic spreaded garlic crust pizza.
But hey, real quick, we do both agree. You and I do both agree that deep dish pizza is not good, right?
Deep dish pizza is not good.
Okay, good.
No.
So we can't fight on that then. That's noted. Let me note that down.
Yeah, that's easily in the power rankings of pizza. Now I'll eat it. I'll
eat it, but thin crust is superior.
Thin crust is great. It's thin. It goes like thin crust, then hand tossed, then like 3 other kinds of pizza, and then like we're talking true deep dish, right? Like an inch and a half thick deep dish
Chicago
pizza.
Style.
Cole, when we come back, an unintended consequence perhaps coming out of this House versus NCAA settlement that very well could ruin a sport that you and I both love, fundamentally change a sport that you and I both love. That's coming up next. He's Cole Bryson. My name is Diesel. The show is Wire to Wire. You are the Tolos, and this is the Fan Upstate. Madcraft, I could have gone my whole day without knowing that bit of information that you shared with us on the video stream.
So tell everybody what just happened.
So 5 o'clock fight. Question number one was, are you okay with having a conversation with someone while you're going number two in the bathroom?
Yeah.
And it happens here all the time at work. It grosses me out every single time. I don't want to speak to you while you're deucing or I'm deucing. I don't need to have this conversation right now. It can wait 5 minutes. Okay. But Madcraft says in the stream, I encourage you all to look up what Roman bathhouses were like and Google the term tersorium. Everyone doing their business basically faced each other, and then they shared the tersorium, which was a sponge on a wooden stick, to clean themselves. Which is crazy, Cole, because before this message came in from Madcraft, after our conversation on the air, I opened up my phone because I'm addicted to it. I can't not look at it.
Yeah.
And it showed me a depiction of a Roman bathhouse.
Before Madcraft sent the message.
Before Madcraft sent that.
That's nuts.
Like, Madcraft can't put things on my phone. He can't make my Facebook algorithm show me things.
At least we don't think he can, right?
Yeah.
Hey, real quick before we get into
gross.
this scholarship conversation that you have. Speaking of phones, I want to know from you as well as our audience, our Tolos, is it bad that when somebody like me drops their phone or gets water in their phone over the weekend like I did and has now gone 2 or 3 days without a phone, that like I absolutely, for the last 2 to 3 days, Diesel, I have felt naked. Like it feels so weird.
Oh, please give me that feeling.
Well, see,
Please.
like I do everything from my phone.
Yeah.
Work, this job. I mean, not this job, but my other work. I answer emails, text messages, phone calls, everything from my phone. In the last few days, I hadn't had it. It feels so weird.
I'm with you. Are you feeling the little phantom rings in your pockets?
A little vibration
buzz?
sometimes.
Yeah. Like sometimes I'll leave the house, intentionally leave my phone at home.
Yeah.
Like if I'm just running up to the gas station or to the grocery store or something like that, like I'll go without my phone because it proves to me that I can still operate without it.
But it's bad though, this feeling that I have. Like it's not healthy,
You're
right?
getting itchy.
It's not healthy.
Yeah, but like once you get over that hump, man, you're gonna put your phone back in your pocket. You're gonna get a new one. You're gonna say, "Oh, this is kind of burdensome." Dude, I would go back to a dumb phone in a heartbeat.
Really? Would you?
If I could. Oh my God, yes. Like if all it could do was accept phone calls and text messages, like basic, even if it was T9 texting, I'd go back to that to get away from having social media in front of my face all the time.
I'm not proud of it. Like it's not healthy, but Monday was Memorial Day. Today's Wednesday. And it's been almost 3 days now, or 2.5 days. And man, it's felt weird. Like you wake up, you know what's bad? Like you wake up in the morning and without a phone, the first thing you do is look for your phone.
Yeah.
It's not healthy.
Spur Daddy says, man, those damn Romans were disgusting all the way around. Spur, what doesn't make any sense to me is how could the Romans have been so ingenious when it comes to building coliseums and building aqueducts and all of the incredible architectural feats that they accomplished. Speaking of which, those aqueducts were lined with lead, and that's what made them very, very sick. They didn't know that at the time. But how could they accomplish all of these things, expanding to the biggest empire the world has ever known? And the best they can come up with to clean their rear ends is a communal sponge on a stick.
They couldn't build walls between the stalls.
They couldn't. Yeah. You could build a coliseum that stood the test of time, but you couldn't put up a 4-inch wide Roman concrete divider between the stalls. Like that baffles me.
I guess
they
just didn't think anything by it, you know?
Yeah.
It's weird though.
Yeah. I mean, again, they were, like I said, they were drinking water out of clay pots that were lined with lead because it made the pots waterproof, right? Water didn't seep out of them. But they didn't realize that they were giving themselves lead poisoning every single day of their lives. Didn't make any sense. So Cole, we spent some time earlier this week talking about the new House versus NCAA settlements. And there's a lot to it. There's going to be so much that all of these schools have to figure out on an individual basis. And I said earlier this week, that's one of the things that scares me the most. Is these schools figuring out all of these things on an individual basis, because you're going to have 130 some odd programs all doing it their own way, all prioritizing different things. And we're going to have the wild, wild west as far as recruiting, right? and your ability to weaponize whatever system you've got in place for recruiting. But Cole, I'm afraid for college baseball because of the new rule or the mentioning in the settlement of no scholarship limits.
Yeah.
Like, so they're wanting to get away from scholarship limits and basically go to roster caps. And you could say, well, that's semantics, right? What's the difference between a scholarship limit and a roster cap? You can't have more than X number of players on your roster. Well, what that means, Cole, and this is one of the biggest things that if you're a baseball fan here in the Southeast, if you love the fact that Coastal Carolina can go win a national championship out of the Big South, if you love the fact that Wofford is making the postseason, that UNC Greensboro or Wilmington or whoever is making postseason ball, that East Carolina is hosting a regional from a group of 5 conference. The fact that Ole Miss, that North Carolina, that whoever can just say, you know what? Baseball roster's 25 guys. We're going to fully fund and give every single one of them a scholarship. Should scare the living hell out of you. Because what makes college baseball so great and so democratic right now is that every single school has to deal with the same scholarship restriction. It's 11 and change, like 11 and a half scholarships divided amongst the 25 some odd guys on your roster. And you can recruit based on the percentage of a scholarship that they can offer. You can say, hey, you come to North Carolina, we're going to give you a 25% scholarship. Meanwhile, the head coach at Coastal, well, not this head coach, not the one who just said, I'm done, I'm going home, and then got into the postseason. Well, he could say, well, I'm going to give you a 30% scholarship to come to Coastal. We value you so much, we're going to give you a 30% deal. And so you may say, well, it's advantageous for me to go to Coastal Carolina and play baseball there because I can get a higher percentage of my schooling paid for. But part of the House versus NCAA settlement could eliminate scholarship limits in favor of roster caps, which would allow schools to fully fund every scholarship on the roster if they want to, which I think, Cole, is going to completely kill what makes college baseball special.
I don't think it will because, at the end of the day, like those small schools that are going to be fully funded just like the big schools, while the money may be different, the small schools aren't winning on a consistent enough basis for it, to my opinion, have a big difference. Like when you say you think it's going to kill what makes college baseball special, do you mean with the small schools making the postseason?
I'm saying that they are going to remove the level playing field that all of these schools are on, at least from the scholarship standpoint. Now, I mean, Coastal Carolina can't compete with Florida and their facilities in baseball. They can't compete with South Carolina and their facilities in baseball. And that's one thing, of course, Cole, that will always benefit the bigger, richer schools is they can put you in better digs for a couple of years while you're in school.
Yeah.
But the financial aspect, the financial side of it, which is everybody's in the same boat. No matter what school you're in, you're getting a partial scholarship. I think that's going to make it so much harder, Cole, now for Coastal Carolina or for Georgia Southern or James Madison or whoever it is to get the best players that they've been getting because they're choosing these smaller schools in lieu of the bigger school because they get a bigger piece of their education paid for.
See, I don't think that there's that big of an indifference now. What I mean is I do not think that right now there are a lot of kids that are going and choosing the smaller schools because of getting a bigger share of the scholarship. I just think that, like, for example, let's take Wofford, for example. They're in the SoCon. I don't think there's a ton of kids on Wofford's roster, and I say ton. I would even go as far as saying these. I don't think there are very many kids on Wofford's roster for baseball who chose Wofford over a big school because Wofford could give them a higher percentage of scholarship. I think that for the most part, I do not think you'll see a big difference because Wofford, a team like Wofford or a team like Coastal, in my opinion, they'll still be playing against their conference. Like they'll still get in the tournament. They'll still make the tournament, in my opinion, because they're still playing SoCon teams. let's be honest. If these teams are playing SEC or ACC teams all season, they're not getting in. I don't think that there are a ton of kids out there. And again, I could be off. My numbers could be off here. I haven't done a ton of research, but I don't know how many kids are actually choosing the Wofford's and Coastal Carolinas over the big schools is my point.
So I'd love to hear from any of our listeners. I know that we have a ton of baseball talent that comes out of this state.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that we have listeners who have played college ball at some schools or the other, whatever sport there is. So we'd love to hear from you throughout the show, throughout the last hour and 24 minutes of the show. If you played baseball, specifically baseball in college, how much of a decision, how much of a factor was it in your decision, the percentage of scholarship that you got? Because I've always heard, Cole, that a lot of players who choose to go to the smaller school will choose to go there because they get a potentially larger piece of their scholarship covered. And, playing time will always be a factor, right? If you are a B-level player, if your best is a number 2 on a roster at Mississippi State, who's always a really good baseball program, you may say, okay, I'm going to go choose Southern Miss, where I can be a starter and I can be a star at Southern Miss.
So my question would be, let's take a Wofford, let's take a Coastal Carolina and a College of Charleston, right? Mm-hmm. Those are 3 teams. My question would be, of those 3 teams, you're looking at Diesel. I don't know exactly how many players make up a roster, but I know you have 20 to 30 players per roster, right? Somewhere in that ballpark. If you're looking at Wofford, Coastal, and College of Charleston, I would like to know, of the players that are on this year's roster, how many of the players for those 3 schools chose between their school and a South Carolina or a Clemson or a Tennessee or a Vanderbilt? You see what I'm saying? Like, I would like to know, because of this conversation, it does pique my interest in how many student athletes actually do choose between a larger school and a smaller school and choose the smaller because of the bigger piece of the scholarship. I just want to know how often that happens. And I remember you asked Mark Kingston a very similar question to that, right? I just don't know that there's a lot of – and I could be dead wrong. I find it very hard to believe, and I don't mean this – don't take this the wrong way, listeners. I find it very hard to believe that there are many kids on a roster, Diesel, like Wofford, that also are going and having to choose between Wofford and South Carolina. You know what I mean? And I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm not saying I know that for a fact, but I don't know how big the scholarships will impact baseball. I think that when you're talking about scholarship limits and not having those limits, now that baseball can be fully funded, I would venture to say that maybe the better teams, Diesel, will be even better. Could it create less parity? Now, I think it could create less parity, right? I'm not saying it will, but maybe it does create a little less parity in terms of the totality of the postseason in college baseball.
But isn't that what makes the postseason of college baseball great? The parity.
It does. Yeah.
The fact that you've got as almost as many small schools who are playing elite baseball at a small level, at a lower level, getting in.
Yeah, as long as I would say yes. Those are the ones getting in, like the Woffords and the Coastal Carolinas. Them getting in and making runs is fantastic for the game. I just don't know. I would have to go back and look. Have there been enough of those runs for it to actually make a difference?
Want to hear from you, Tolo, 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. You can also call in at 844-FAN-PHONE. That's the renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone line. And we go to those phone lines and we bring in Rick to talk about college baseball and the changes it faces. Rick, what you got?
Okay, Diesel, I went to school a long time ago, 1980. And I played college baseball. I got 50% back then.
Okay.
And I thought that was a lot. But I think it'll ruin baseball if they try to fund 100% of these scholarships.
Well, can't do it. And Rick, we appreciate the phone call there. I want to keep you on the line here for just a second. The rule states that they don't have to fully fund every single scholarship, but it's if a school chooses to prioritize it, they can fully fund every single scholarship. That's, this is going to be the Wild West as far as how schools are going to weaponize the use of the money that they have and prioritize it to this sport or to that sport. But I mean, you tell me, Rick, as somebody who played college baseball, was the decision that you made choosing where to go, was that affected by the percentage of scholarship that was offered?
Yes, I went to University of Tennessee. Clemson, South Carolina offered me 25%. This is back 40-some years ago. But yes, it affected. The more I got, the more I wanted to go to Tennessee. It helped me with my schoolwork. So maybe it'll help the students, but I got a feeling it's just going to be just the Wild Wild West again, like football, NIL. I mean, it's going to be wild. The bigger ones are going to get bigger. Smaller ones are going to get smaller.
Thank you.
Thanks for the call, man.
Rick. Yeah.
I don't know that. Listen, I hear what Rick said, and Rick's talking about going to Tennessee. Well, of course, a big school like Tennessee can offer more of a scholarship than a Clemson or South Carolina. We're talking about a smaller school being able to offer more of a scholarship. I could be dead wrong. I just don't know. I don't know that I believe that fully funding baseball, if schools choose to do so, I don't know that it's a bad thing. I really don't. I like to see how it plays out, but I'm not sure that it's a terrible thing.
I do look at it one way, that it will alleviate some of the hardship that these players are facing. I mean, baseball is not necessarily a rich sport where every kid can pay their, 50% of their tuition. It's still difficult to do. So if you eliminate that hardship and say, your school is on us, just come here and play baseball, I appreciate what that's going to do for the athlete, but I do feel like it's gonna ruin some of this parity in college baseball that we love.
All right, coming up next, we will get to what you call the headlines. We call them daily wires. Coming up on the very next segment, he's Diesel, I'm Cole Bryson, and this is the Fan Upstate. Want to get you caught up on what happened last night, what's going on, what is at the top of the sports world. Every single day we run through some daily wires. There it is. There it is. I want to let you know, all charges were dropped against number one golfer in the world, Scottie Scheffler. The judge decided this afternoon that they would not continue to pursue and press charges against Mr. Scheffler. So Scottie is scot-free, which is a good thing. We all agree with that, right? All right, former Gamecock, Lashinda Dimas, Diesel put this one on the rundown, was awarded the 400-meter hurdles gold from the London Olympics, Diesel, after Russian winner was stripped of the gold. Is that right?
Yeah, so Lashinda placed second. She won the silver. But the IOC, I think it was a doping charge, stripped the Russian winner of the gold medal. And so how about that? We got a former Gamecock going to get a gold medal.
Might have another Gamecock in the Olympics here soon as well.
Does it feel a little cheap? Like, would you how psyched would you be to be upgraded from silver to gold? And this is, years after the fact. When were the London Olympics?
It would be quite fascinating to get that kind of message.
Those were in 2012.
Yeah, that's a long time.
That was 12 years ago. Like 12 years after the fact, do you even care anymore?
Probably not. I mean, it probably means something, but it's not the same, right? Last night, the Minnesota Timberwolves defeated the Dallas Mavericks 105-100. Dallas still has a lead in the series, 3-1. I said it yesterday, I thought Minnesota was too good not to win a game. They were too good to get swept. They did avoid the sweep. For the first time all series, Karl Anthony Towns decided to show up.
Dallas was in that one, right down to the stretch call. They had a chance to win, but I was telling you, I watched the last couple of minutes of that game, and I'm just blown away about how unathletic Luka Doncic looks.
It looks like it, but he's really not, which is wild.
Right. He looks slow. He looks overweight. He doesn't have a whole lot of fluidity to his game, but the guy still goes out and scores a ton of points. I don't understand it.
The Atlanta Braves last night defeated the Washington Nationals 2-0 behind the effort of Max Fried. Atlanta now 31-21 on the season. They will go at it again tonight. Nationals Braves 7:20 first pitch. The Panthers defeated the Rangers last night in overtime. Final score was 3-2. That series in the NHL is now tied at 2 apiece. Also, in the NHL, the Stars and Oilers tonight, 8:30. Dallas leads the series 2-1. Let's see if the Stars can go up 3-1 over the Oilers and be a game away from punching their ticket to the NHL Finals. Last night, Caitlin Clark scored a season-high 30 points, but the Fever fell to the Sparks. The Fever are 1-7, 11th in the Eastern Conference. So Caitlin Clark needs a little help, it looks like, in Indiana.
You don't say. She was drafted to the worst team in the league, and it shows.
Huge news today out of the MLB. We talked about it earlier in the show, and we'll get to it again a little bit later because it is significant for the MLB. But the MLB announced today that the Negro League's records have officially been integrated into the MLB record books. Josh Gibson will become the MLB single-season leader in batting average, slugging, and OPS. So, big day for the MLB. As I said in our interview earlier, which you'll hear again here in a few minutes, Diesel, it's overdue. I'm glad it happened. The bad part is, while it should have happened, what I hate is the ones who actually performed in the Negro League aren't even around to be celebrated, which is my issue.
And that was a fascinating answer I didn't expect from Disha Thosar. And we're going to replay that interview coming up here in just about 25 minutes. She said that she felt like it does a disservice to completely merge these record books and sort of erases the history, the fact that there was a delineation, a differentiation between the two leagues. Mm-hmm. I didn't expect her to go there with that answer. She makes a compelling argument.
Sure.
But it's interesting, Cole, to say, to essentially say that just as the leagues were separate, the records should be held separate as well.
On this day in 1886, the Philadelphia Athletics tried to cheat and load the base paths with sand to slow the St. Louis Browns down. So, Diesel, this is fascinating. You put this in the rundown. Captain Charles Kaminsky noticed the grounds crew removed the sand, and the Browns stole 14 bases in the 18-1 and 11-3 wins the next two games.
Puts into perspective the Ronald Acuna accomplishment. What he had, like 70 stolen bases last year. I mean, that's a brilliant way to cheat. It's, it just goes to show you, man, all the way back in the 1880s, teams were cheating in major league sports. Teams were trying to get every advantage that they could. The Athletics knew that the Browns stole a lot of bases, so they poured some sand on the base paths to try to slow them down a little bit. It didn't work. And they went out there and waxed them 2 games in a row with 14 stolen bases included.
And just a quick programming note, Diesel, earlier in the show, I did move Disha up to 6.
Okay.
It's a little bit lengthy interview, so we're going to play that in the very next segment for you. And then at 6:20, Diesel has some audio that I love. I've heard it already. I cannot wait to hear it again. So stay tuned, 6:20. Probably the funniest audio that you will hear this week coming up at 6:20 today. But in the very next segment, we talk to Disha Thosar, a Fox Sports MLB columnist and reporter. She was absolutely fantastic. We'll have that for you next. 680 The Fan in Atlanta. Brandon, what would you have said if I would have told you last Thursday before the draft that the Falcons would take Michael Penix Jr.?
I would have said, get off of the microphone and drive yourself to an emergency room immediately as you have suffered some sort of head trauma that you are unaware of. Unprecedented, unbelievable, and still unreally decided whether or not it is a good pick, horrible pick, a pick that may turn out to be just fine, or something that just will have everybody scratching their head for a lifetime. I will be personally offended if you don't have me on again.
Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson.
Turn on, leave on. Afternoons 3 to 7 on the Fan Upstate. Take control of your listening experience with Rewind on the Odyssey app. Missed a jaw-dropping moment? No worries.
The Odyssey app makes it easy.
With Rewind, you can relive big moments from Rob Brown, Jim Rome.
Wire with Cole Bryson and Diesel.
Just hit Rewind with the Odyssey app on the Fan Upstate.
Upstate.
WYRD Greenville.
WORD Spartanburg.
WSBC HD3 Greenville. The official sports voice of you, the Upstate Fan. An Odyssey sports station.
You ready? Let's go.
From the fields to the courts and the gridiron to the tracks.
Electrifying sports talk from start to finish.
You're going wire to wire
With Diesel and Cole Bryson.
on the Fan Upstate.
We talked Atlanta Braves in hour number one, and if you have any Braves or baseball questions, MLB questions, go ahead and get those questions in right now because we do want to bring in Disha Thosar. Disha is a reporter and columnist for Fox Sports MLB. Disha, we appreciate you hopping on Wire to Wire for the very first time. How are you?
Of course, I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
We love talking baseball. Obviously, we're in Braves country here in South Carolina, but I want to ask, as we are now almost halfway through the MLB season, is there anything that surprises you anymore about seeing injuries, not only for the Braves like Spencer Strider and Ronald Acuna Jr., who just went down, but especially on the Tommy John front? It seems like numbers continue to rise. As a reporter and a columnist, is this something that you've just become accustomed to?
I wish, but I definitely still think injuries are the worst. I'm not hoping for them, and I'm certainly not expecting them. So it is a little surprising, I guess, especially with the Tommy John surgeries really piling up lately. That one is getting a little less and less surprising, but it is a big issue. And I think until some of these injuries and the way they are starting to occur are addressed, I think it's always going to be surprising. Less so for kind of freak injuries like the Acuna one, with him just kind of running back and forth on the bases. I mean, they're still so brutal whenever they happen to the stars of the game. And I'm never expecting it to happen to someone like Acuna, Strider. Of course, a guy like DeGrom is still on the injured list with his second career Tommy John surgery. So it's an issue, and I think if we become less surprised, that's not a good thing. I think we have to keep paying attention and keep trying to get some answers.
Disha, this is Diesel here. Thanks for joining us on the show for the very first time, Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. To that point, to the Tommy John, I've argued that specialization from a younger and younger age, travel ball being a huge part of it. The guys never really give their different body parts a chance to rest and heal. There's no such thing as an off season anymore. I look at that as being a major culprit. Does Major League Baseball kind of feel the same way? I know I'm sure there's studies into kind of what are the causes of this, why we're seeing an increase in that, but am I on the right track or am I, completely in the wrong ballpark?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you as far as it goes with the youth movement. I think a lot of these young pitchers in middle school, high school, they are obsessed with watching the game and seeing these guys throw triple digits, and it looks impressive. The pitchers are hyped after doing it. Really, there's no reason sort of not to. Even now we're seeing the A's closer Mason Miller, who looks phenomenal throwing 100, 101 fastballs. So really, I think the trend starts with the fascination of being able to do it. And if young arms, I mean, I saw a research recently in that they're still developing straight into their early 20s. And if young pitchers are starting to trying to get to 100 in middle school and high school, it's just not the right time. And I think MLB, as far as what they think, they've kind of just turned down theories. There's a lot of pitchers in the majors who think the culprit is the pitch clock. Now that they have to work faster, they're getting injured more. There's also another theory of the sticky stuff. Now that that's banned, the pitchers have to work harder to generate velocity. I think in the end, it is a mix of all of these reasons. It's hard for me to believe they're not all connected, but I think really the biggest issue has to start with this youth movement and trying to kind of get away from the game being just 100-mile-per-hour fastballs. And there's pitchers who are really successful, guys like Zach Wheeler, who don't throw all the way up there. They'll top out at 95, 97, and they have long careers. So I think really it has to be changed, of course, starting from the minor leagues, but even before that, just when scouts are trying to pick these guys from high school.
I mean, I look at everything like it's a pendulum. You know, players have learned to throw faster, and it's cool to throw faster, so then everybody's throwing faster. But then hitters get better and better and better, and they catch up to that. Do you foresee a day when across the board pitchers strategically are learning to essentially throw slower but with better control and placement, and that defeats players who all they know how to do is hit 100-mile-an-hour fastballs?
Yeah, I think so. And then that's why I mentioned guys like Zach Wheeler, even Aaron Nola, and they are on the older side of younger pitchers coming up, and they've been established in a way. They've been doing it for 15 years now. So it is different now, even from the way that these pitchers are being taught. But I think it's kind of twofold, because even pitchers in the minor leagues, they're almost expecting Tommy Johns now, and sort of that return rate of a year and a half. And then, okay, get right back in it. At least they got their one Tommy John out of the way, and then they'll kind of be free to hit the 100-mile-per-hour again. And I think that is the problem. I think it's so commonplace, this surgery, that it's just kind of a hurdle that you have to accept and get over. And I think that pitchers should start to be a little scared of the surgery and injuries in general. It shouldn't be so welcomed in baseball. And I think that's really the only thing that will get this sport to change. It can't be some surgery that you just will accept will happen at some point in your life. It has to be something you're still trying to avoid.
Disha Thosar of Fox Sports joining us on Wire to Wire. She is a MLB reporter and columnist for Fox Sports MLB. Disha, we talked last week, and we did not know this news would break today, but it's great that it did with you being on our program, because I want to get your opinion. But a historic day for the MLB, as they are officially incorporating Negro League statistics of more than 2,300 players, something that, in my opinion, is long, long overdue. What are your thoughts on what this means for the MLB?
Yeah, I think it's great. And it's been a long time coming. I'm glad that this has been not just sort of a singular decision by MLB. They really worked with the Negro Leagues advocates and the community that they have, and kind of formed a good time and a good solution. I think one thing to be aware of is sort of the language that's being used. I still don't know that I agree with all of these Negro League stats just being completely incorporated into MLB, because that to me tells me they're a little bit trying to change history. If we look 100 years from now, the Negro League stats and MLB are just going to be together. And that's not what happened. MLB actively had put up an iron curtain to make sure that these players were not allowed to play. So I think it is a little bit semantics overall. Of course, this is a net positive, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. I think this is long overdue again, and it was something that needed to happen a long time ago. But it shouldn't be something that just allows sort of history to be changed. And I don't think it necessarily will. Of course, there are still a lot of advocates to say like these stats happen, it could be the major league stats and that's all encompassing rather than just MLB as an entity, because the Negro Leagues were extremely, extremely successful, exciting. They were their own thing. So I'm not necessarily agreeing with kind of just erasing that whole part of it and just incorporating those stats into MLB. I think there has to be sort of just a little bit better language in how we talk about it. But of course, overall, this is great, and I love that it happened.
Disha, do you think when we talk about these Negro League statistics being incorporated, do you think that our conversations and discussions over the past, 50 to 100 years would be different when you're talking about former baseball players who were predominantly white and Caucasian, if the outlook or the look on baseball's past would be different? Because the reality of it is there are a lot of these players who played in these leagues that were phenomenal baseball players.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think if this had started earlier, then right now we'd be talking about it way differently than we would have been maybe if the Negro Leagues were incorporated as MLB stats maybe 50 years ago. But really what happened all these years ago was that even guys like Jackie Robinson, they just were not allowed to even enter MLB until really the end of their careers. And even when they did enter at the end of their careers, they dominated. So I think that's kind of the gray area there of what we won't really know. It's hard to just incorporate all the stats and pretend like they were in MLB this whole time. And I think that's why it's important. I mean, even just to bring it up, I think as long as people are aware of sort of this discrepancy and MLB's history, and it's great that they're trying to right this wrong, but they can't also just forget and erase that it ever happened. And that's sort of the danger of just the language that we use when we talk about it.
Disha, you talked there about combining these leagues and maybe changing the nomenclature around it. We all know that the NFL is actively working towards international franchises in the UK and Germany and other countries. Do you believe that it would be feasible for Major League Baseball to either do the same thing in the same way via expansion, or to form alliances with other international leagues, like Japan, like Korea? I mean, we've seen Japan obviously be elite in international play over the past couple of years. Do you see Major League Baseball wanting to grow in a similar way?
I'm sure they want to, but it is very hard. I mean, you go internationally and my family is from India. They're obsessed with cricket over there. It's just harder for baseball to catch on that way internationally. And I think the problem with being able to integrate it straight away and just incorporate it into this one sort of major league, how they are calling it pro football instead of NFL just for football, is they play differently everywhere. There's a lot of differences. Even in Japan, there's a different mound height. There's a different baseball tackiness. I think in order for it just to be fully incorporated, baseball would have to be extremely standardized. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. And of course, that would be a major challenge to even get to that point. I think it's a lofty goal. There's no problem with trying to get the world more interested in baseball. I think that's why we saw the success of the World Baseball Classic and things like that help. But it'll have to keep going, I think, for a while before we can reach sort of that point with baseball.
You can follow her on Twitter at Disha Thosar. That's Thosar, spelling Thosar for you. Give her a follow. Let her know that you heard her on Wire to Wire. Disha, you cover the Mets, and with this area, South Carolina being Braves country as it is, the Mets, Nationals, Phillies, Braves are obviously talked about a good bit. Is there a franchise, in your opinion, that has more pressure on them to turn it around than David Stearns and the Mets do? Because it seems like the people who do love the Mets, Disha, they are absolutely fed up and have been for a while now.
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to pinpoint any franchise besides the Mets. I mean, maybe the Angels and the A's and can be thrown in there, but even then I think their situations are just so different. They haven't made huge changes to the organization top to bottom the way that the Mets have, and especially with all of the resources they have now thanks to Steve Cohen and his wallet, that he created the pressure himself. And he knew that when he took over the team and he put out even lofty expectations for the club. That he did make mistakes that way. I mean, I think he could have started with lower expectations and then there wouldn't have been as much pressure. And fans are really just losing it. I mean, this is the first time I've heard from people who have watched the Mets for 40 years who just are stepping out and enjoying summer now. They can't even watch the games. They're not going to the ballpark. And right now, we just saw, I mean, a few minutes before this call, Edwin Diaz was placed on the injured list with a shoulder impingement, so he might be out for a couple months. And then in the first inning, Pete Alonso was hit by a pitch on his hand. So really the bad news, just once it goes, it's pouring. And they're really going to need sweeping changes and really a buy-in from a fan base that is completely fed up and just wants to see them win. So, no, I guess to answer your question, I don't see another franchise with more pressure than the Mets that have to just get to a championship yesterday.
Disha, are there any other teams that have records similar to the Braves around that 30-win mark who you see as having such an injury bug right now as compared to the Atlanta Braves, who obviously lost Austin Riley for a good amount of time, Sean Murphy for a good amount of time, Spencer Strider and Acuna are both out for the season? Like, how impressive is it to you that the Braves are still sitting there at second in the division with more than 30 wins and having so many guys out?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a huge testament to the organization and the trust that they've formed throughout the industry and not even just in Braves country, but sort of throughout the league. It's just assumed that, okay, well, they suffered their ace is out, their MVP is out, but they're still in it. And that only happens because of these recent years. And of course, winning the division all these consecutive years helps. What Alex Anthopoulos has done helps. It goes from all the way top to bottom. And especially after Acuna went down in 2021, the way that they were able to overcome it, of course, with huge trade deadline moves. I'm expecting the front office to do that again. And who knows if they can kind of catch lightning in a bottle for a second time. I think that's tough. But yeah, to your point, there really is no other team in the league, maybe besides the Astros, who also really struggled to get, even now they've started to play better, but they're certainly still behind. They're not in first place in the AL West, and they need to make up ground. But they're another team that had struggled with injuries in the pitching staff to start the season, and there was still this expectation that they'll be in it. They're not going anywhere by the time September rolls around. And it's the same thing with the Braves. The Astros get away with that because of their recent history and their track record of getting into the playoffs all these consecutive years. So it definitely helps. I think recency bias is alive and well, but more than that, the Braves have shown that they can conquer these sorts of challenges and injuries and still be able to be competitive.
Disha, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You've got 33,000 followers on Twitter, an impressive number. You don't get there without ruffling some feathers and probably getting a lot of interaction, positive and negative, in your mentions. What fan base takes over your mentions most in a positive way, and what fan base takes over most in a negative way?
That is a great question. It's funny because I definitely ruffled feathers within the Mets while I covered them for 4 years on the beat. But I was ruffling feathers more so for ownership and the front office, really just calling them out on their really ridiculous moves. So this was going to be surprising, but the most positive fan base for me is the Mets, because I think I've gotten some kind of good loyalty there just based on my previous reporting. And so far, the worst fan base has been just the Yankees, because that's a fan base that can't seem to handle any sort of criticism or negativity. Of course, this year, there's been very little, almost none of that. But last year and the year before it, they really struggled. And when they were called out for not making the playoffs last year, Yankees fans, of course, knew the reasons, but it was harder for them to accept it the way that a Mets fan base is just used to losing. Yankees are not. So, yeah, I'm dealing with sort of a dichotomy in New York fan bases right now.
Disha, the most important question that any of our listeners or Diesel and I could ask you is, covering the Mets and obviously being on the beat and now covering MLB in its totality, have you met Frank the Tank yet?
I've not personally met him, but I've definitely seen him around the ballpark.
Or heard him, right?
Yeah, exactly. Heard him, seen him, all of it.
We appreciate you hopping on with us. Fantastic stuff. I love following you on Twitter. You do great work, and we hope to talk to you again real soon.
Thanks.
Those are back in utility.
From the News Talk 98.9 WORD Weather Center, here's the upstate's most
Trusted
trusted forecast on
forecast.
the fan.
Lovely.
Clear skies tonight with a low temperature of 56 degrees and northwest winds at 10 to 20. Thursday, lots of sun and a high of 81. Friday, lots of sunshine.
Cole, we all know what a hot mic is, right? It's when the mic is on, but you don't realize it's on. So you say things that you shouldn't say.
Never happened to
On a
me
microphone.
before, right?
Never happened to us. Never, not on this station. Never once has it ever happened. Cole, this might be the worst case of hot mic I've ever heard. So
is it the worst though? I love it.
I do love it, but when you consider not because it's the best, because it's hilarious,
right,
but it's the worst because of everything else. So,
that's true.
Bro Bible obtained a clip of audio, Cole, that came from a NFHS network broadcast, which is a high school broadcast network that shares various sports games on, with a high school soccer announcer trash talking the kids and talking about the moms on a hot mic.
Oh boy, I can't wait.
So at first, Cole, I thought this was going to be audio from like inside the stadium. Like he was doing, in-stadium announcements on the PA system. No, it's not that. This is over broadcast, right? They caught two commentators on a hot mic during halftime, and we're going to play little clips of this whole thing because it was like the whole piece was about 4 or 5 minutes long.
Jeez.
And not all of it is completely audible. So I'm going to pull some of the best clips. And this hits home for you, Cole, because you do play-by-play.
Mm-hmm.
You've done play-by-play. You know a lot of people who do play-by-play. And we know how people talk when they're off the air as compared to on the air. So this is going to be great. Listen to this from NFHS High School Network, clip number 1 of a high school girls soccer announcer at halftime, not realizing he's on a hot mic.
God, was that first half as ugly as I thought it was? Yes. That game, that had no flow whatsoever. Thinking it's a high school game as an announcer, I just can't go, what in the hell was that?
Bro, what do you mean, bro? Is that high school soccer is not very good, bro?
Gosh, that's so funny though, man.
Bro,
that's
you
funny.
got no flow. Dude, this is high school soccer.
God.
High school soccer, okay?
And it was girls or boys?
Girls soccer.
Girls.
So he's clearly not happy with how the game is going. He's bored. He thinks the game sucks. He's talking trash about the players, he also said.
My mind kind of flipped the kill me now switch at about 30 minutes in. If they're just going to keep kicking the damn ball out of bounds and missing passes all day, I might as well just go home.
Yeah, bro, go home, man. Why don't you do some surfing, bro?
Charlie is fed up, man. Somebody send Charlie home.
Make yourself a pina colada, bro. It's better than watching girls soccer getting paid for it, bro.
This is so good, man. This is so good.
It gets better. Here's clip number 3.
I just want to do a header off the top of the press box. Unfortunately, it's too low.
Ah!
It'll kill me.
No! I want to take a header off the press box, but it's not high enough. It won't kill me.
My word. He really just went there.
I want to do a header off the press box. I love this guy. You know what? I don't know if I kind of think this dude got fired, right? But I kind of want to. I kind of want to get him on Cameo, right, and have him do play-by-play of our lives.
God.
That'd be fantastic. Here's one more clip.
A little technique would be nice. What the hell are they teaching those kids?
What are they teaching those kids, bro? Hey, bro. Bro.
His voice is hilarious, by the way.
Don't you guys know how to do anything, bro? Okay, so here's the best one. I saved the best for last. Here's both commentators. Obviously, this one guy we've heard a lot of clips from already. He's the most audible.
Yeah.
There's another guy in the booth. They're talking about the hot moms at the game. Yeah, it's not good. So the first part is kind of the toughest to hear, but I'm going to give you a heads up on what he's saying. He's saying, wow, one of my favorite things about working high school soccer games are the soccer moms. And then it goes back to this other guy, so it's a little more audible. He drops in a curse word. You're going to hear it bleeped this time. We can't hit the dump button every day. So here we go with the coup de grace, the cherry on top, if you will.
High school soccer, girls soccer, high school soccer moms. Up top, baby.
The best part about calling high school soccer is the soccer moms.
Jeez.
And he's like, F yeah, bro, up top. So that's the
Gave
first
him a
half.
5.
That's gave him a high five. F yeah, bro, up top.
Gotta be able to where that table is facing us. Yeah. So she can tear it the off. I can't see the legs, but I can feel the attitude from here.
Jeez.
This conversation never happened, by the way. We get in trouble.
That's the best part. This conversation never happened. We would get in trouble.
You know you're saying things that you shouldn't say in front of a microphone.
God.
You got to assume that the mic is always on. But the other guy's saying, man, look at the curves on the lady over there. He's like, yeah, I can't see the legs, but I could tell. I could see the attitude from here.
That is fantastic.
Man. And then he follows it all up with a,
This conversation never happened, by the way. We get in trouble.
yeah, you would.
I've got to clip that part. This conversation never happened.
Conversation never happened.
That is now becoming a soundbite. for this show because that is fantastic.
Oh,
like you
my
say all this
God.
crap, you go on and on and on about how the soccer moms, and then you want to take a diver off the press box, but it's not tall enough. But then you say, "Hey man, this conversation never happened."
I just want to do a header off the top of the press box.
Oh,
I need you to have this audio on your phone, Cole, because I know that you're running these circles. You got to share this audio.
I do.
Dude, man, like, look, we all have made a hot mic mistake once or twice or 5 times in our careers. We've all done it, but you guys don't understand, man. People will always use that against you. And what's the golden rule? Always assume if there's a microphone in the room that it's on. And I don't know whose responsibility it was in this broadcast. I can't imagine they've got a staff. These dudes are probably doing it all themselves. And they forgot to mute their microphones when they went to halftime. And they're just 2 dudes, right, in the press box, shooting the you-know-what, talking trash, saying, man, this soccer game's so bad, I want to take a header off the press box, but I can't do it because the fall wouldn't even kill me.
So when I was in college, Diesel, I'll give you a good story. I did have a hot mic incident. It wasn't me directly, but we were calling some baseball postseason games in college, right? And you know that when you're in college, the college broadcasts are made up of students. So you have like somebody who's in charge of the broadcast, and then you have somebody who does the play-by-play in color, and maybe there's a camera guy or two. Well, this night it was raining, and we had been there all day calling postseason baseball. And it was dark, pouring down rain. We were in a rain delay. And it might have been 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And something very, very funny but perverted was said. And mind you, this is a Christian college, right, that I went to. And with it being the postseason,
you were not displaying your Christian values very well, sir.
Well, I don't think it was me that said it that time. I think it was a conversation, and I
blame it on someone else.
I think it was. It's funny because I don't remember exactly the whole conversation, but the funny part about it is we had a lot of listeners and a lot of viewers because there were like 8 different teams there, and it was postseason baseball. And hot mic moments happen; they do happen. However, as you said, the moral of the story is you've got to always assume, right? Always assume. Have you, as long as you've been in radio at this station, you never had a pretty good hot mic story?
Dude, I've had like 2 hot mic stories in this studio in the last 2 months.
Well, that's true.
Yeah,
too,
we do it all the time. But no, I don't know that I've ever been caught on a hot mic in the building. I have the most elite hot mic story you'll ever hear. Buddy of mine that I used to do radio with, who used to work here in the upstate, started his radio career in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Okay.
And this is not exactly a hot mic story, but it is like a hot channel on the board story.
Yeah.
The dude was working board op for a Christian radio station early in the morning hours. He did not ascribe to the values of the Christian radio station, and he wanted to watch porn in the studio.
Oh, no.
And he decided, Cole, that listening through the Q speakers wasn't good enough for him. Q speakers, in case anyone doesn't know, we have good quality studio monitors that monitor what's going out over the air.
Yeah.
And then we have the Q speaker, which is a small, crappy speaker that's in the board that's mostly just used to like check to make sure which channel you're using.
Sure.
It's used to preview audio where you don't necessarily need, super great speakers. But he said, you know what? This Q audio is not good enough for me. I am going to watch porn on the good speakers. Now, it is possible to watch something and listen to the audio on the good speakers without having it in program, the channel that sends stuff out over the air.
Yeah.
But this guy forgot to take that channel out of program.
Oh, man.
So here's Billy Graham probably on the station on a Sunday morning trying to deliver a sermon, and you're hearing,
no way. And you know this guy.
Sounds like that. No, I just know of him. It's the story that I know of him. And man, that's that. Of course, he got fired. So I have a question for you, Cole. If audio like this goes out over the air, and he's got a producer, who gets fired?
If that guy has a producer,
Yeah.
I
so
think
like,
they both do.
You think they both get fired?
Yeah.
So like, I wonder, and I think it matters what level are you calling? What are you calling Major League Baseball? Because like, if Joe Buck is in the studio,
Sure.
and Joe Buck goes off to break, he expects his microphone to be muted and not going out over the air.
Correct.
So in that sense, he should be able to say whatever he wants to.
She should,
while
yes.
they're off the air, and be able to have a candid conversation, blow off steam between him and his co-host, and it shouldn't be going out over the air.
Yeah.
But he also is a broadcast professional
Correct.
who should know better than to use that kind of language in a booth when there's microphones present.
That's why I think it's on both.
It's on both.
So let me ask you.
But you and I both know what always happens in that situation. It's the producer that gets fired.
Well, that's
the board op.
right. I'll say this. Very similar situation, like this station carries Burns games, right? I used to do Burns. Rob Brown does Burns now, and anybody that does, this is not just for this station, Diesel, but I'm going to use this station for as a great example, because if you're out calling a game, right? Let's say you and I are calling a game, or you and I are at Ingles. Even better example, you and I are at Ingles. Well, we go to break. For those that do not know how radio works, when Diesel and I are on a remote, we can turn our volume down. But if Diesel and I want to continue to talk to each other on remote during the break, we have to leave our volume up. So if whoever is producing here in the studio, if they leave our mics on, which can happen from time to time, whatever Diesel and I say during the break will go out over the air. Same thing calling a game. If you go to a break during a game, Diesel, I've had this happen back in college radio, because, college radio, people aren't trained professionals. You go to a break during a game, you throw your headset down, you and the guy who are calling the game with, you think you're off the air. However, the producer back in the studio, he didn't turn you off the air, right? So you're going, whatever you're saying is going out over the air. And, it's one of those things to where, to answer your question, the producer, yes, should be at fault, but I also agree, like, to answer the question, who should get fired? I think both should, because the on-air talent has to know, you have to understand the what you said, that you have to use the mics as, or pretend like they're always hot, and you can't say that kind of stuff.
Texter says, is he wrong, though, Diesel? Is he wrong? Hot bleep soccer moms. He's probably not wrong, Texter. But he's supposed to be a broadcast professional. You shouldn't be talking about the moms on a hot mic. You're going to get fired for that. Just as you said, you're going to get fired. This is high. It's like, it's not like you are, a guy getting paid $500,000 to call the Yankees every year. I don't even know what the Yankees broadcaster makes, right?
Good amount of money.
Probably a lot of money. They're not going to fire that guy because they're going to say he's going to have to issue an apology.
Unless it's like racial or something, right?
Sure.
Because a couple of years ago, there was a broadcaster, Diesel, for baseball, play-by-play broadcaster, who was fired because of something he said during a break. And I can't remember exactly. It's been so long now. I can't remember exactly who it was and what he said, but there was one that was fired.
Texter, follow-up text to this. I can't read this. I can't
read
it.
No.
It's funny, but I can't read it on the air. You know why? Because I'm a professional and I don't want to get fired.
Texter, listen, I agree with you, but I can't read it on the air. I should have said that, but I did.
So I know that back in the day, I don't know if you could do this anymore. I don't know if they may have fixed a normal person's ability to see this. So back in the day when we used to go to the Charlotte Motor Speedway every year, go camp out in the infield, we would monitor via like a small satellite dish. We would monitor the signal from the broadcast that's being sent back to network to put it out on the air nationally. So you could capture the signal during the race and watch the live satellite feed during the race, and it wouldn't cut away to commercials. You can hook a little antenna up to a small TV and monitor that. Well, I remember watching once, Cole, the NASCAR play-by-play guys, whoever this is probably late 90s or early 2000s when this happened. They would get on mic and just talk to each other and have the cameramen find hot girls in the crowd and find drunk, passed out rednecks in the infield.
Yeah.
And so there's one year where they have probably the guy sitting way up top monitoring the whole race. He turns his camera around and he finds some dude who's shirtless, passed out, face down on the ground, covered in a pile of beer cans. And they're just trashing this dude harder than all the people who piled the beer cans on him, right? But this is essentially a hot mic moment because somebody can monitor that.
Yeah.
We could monitor that. The general viewing public watching at home, watching CBS couldn't see that. But those of us who had the equipment, we could find out that here's these broadcast professionals, and I don't know who it was calling NASCAR at the time. These broadcast professionals, they're talking like sailors. They're talking just like you or I and everybody else does. So hot mic moments happen.
I found the article from Cake ABC. It's an ABC affiliate, Diesel, where it's in Kansas, by the way, where the high school announcer that you're talking about has been banned from broadcasting in Kansas. No more games for Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore cannot call any more games in Kansas because of what happened. So, life lesson, if you're around microphones, make sure that you don't say anything that you don't want going over the air.
It's hard, man. Like, we're all bros. We're all dudes here, right? We talk like that sometimes, and it's hard to not give in to your baser instincts.
It really is. All right, Diesel, we're going to close the show on the other side. Daily Wires, a lot more coming your way. The last chance for you Tolos to get your thoughts in. That stands for turn it on, leave it on.
Madcraft says Stacy's mom must have been a real hottie.
Stacy's
mom must have had it going on, Madcraft.
Y'all ain't right, man. Y'all ain't right. Final segment up next.
Gonna put a bow on this 47th edition of Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Gonna get you caught up here before the end of the show, though, with everything you've missed over the past 24 hours. We call it our Daily Wires.
Buzz.
There you go. All charges against Scotty Scheffler have been dropped. So congratulations to Scotty. He's not going down for something that he didn't do. The charges were that he dragged a police officer across the ground, injured the police officer, which we have now seen, Cole, via security footage.
Yep.
It's not actually what happened at all. Now, Scotty did not follow directions the way that he should. Scotty claimed that he didn't realize the person flagging him down was a police officer, which I don't understand that argument. I think that's real weak, Scotty, because the dude's wearing a bright yellow vest outside of a crime scene.
Well,
so I think you should have known.
It was a long way down.
Yeah, but all these cops are in bright yellow trench coats working the event.
I don't think I would know.
I mean, I got to imagine the cop was probably wearing, that hat, the big round hat that like points down at the ground. They wear it. They think it makes them look tough.
Yeah.
Standard issue. I understand, but they don't have to like cock it down.
Yeah, I'm glad they got dropped.
Yeah, charges have been dropped. Scotty Scheffler is good to go. Former Gamecock Lucinda Dimas was awarded the 400-meter hurdles gold 12 years following the London Olympics. She finished second. The woman who ran first was stripped of her gold medal due to PEDs. So Lucinda will get her gold medal. Congratulations. I wonder, though, I mean, she's had the silver in her collection now for over a decade. Is the gold going to feel like she earned it?
You got to give the silver back.
Yeah. What do you got? Yeah, that's a great question. Do you have to, if you got the gold, if you got upgraded to gold, would you give it back? Would you sell it?
Oh,
would you keep it? I mean, you won it, but you didn't really win it.
Right.
Same could be said about the gold medal. That's a fascinating question. Would you keep both? Would you sell one? I mean, I can only imagine, Cole, that a big silver block like that, a big ass coin, that's worth a decent chunk of money.
You would think, is it worth $1 or $2?
I don't know. I don't know what it could be worth, but I mean, that's a great question for you, Tolos. What would you do in that situation? You're given a gold medal 12 years after you won silver, but you didn't win silver because you got upgraded to gold.
Yeah.
Do you keep them both? Do you sell one of them? Do you melt it down? What do you do? Does he make it a keepsake in your family? The Minnesota Timberwolves defeated the Dallas Mavericks last night, 105-100. Dallas now has a 3-1 series lead. The ending of that game was absolutely fantastic. Charles Barkley here, Cole, in this audio says that Karl Anthony Towns saved the Timberwolves season.
Also, listen, and Shaq talks about it, Karl Anthony Towns played ball tonight.
Yeah.
We can talk about this and this and this. Dallas had the lead going. But Karl Anthony Towns, we've been waiting on him. Shaq been saying it, your stars have to play like stars. He's been awful in the series, plain and simple. He saved the Timberwolves season tonight. So just give him his flowers. He deserves it. We criticize him. He doesn't play well. We got to give him his flowers because without question, he won that game for them tonight. And it was their team. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. He had a big game, but also, as you guys always say, is your best players have to play great.
Yeah. I love how that show is willing to be critical, and do they?
So he's exactly right. A couple of things regarding that game last night. Dallas missed Derek Lively tremendously. Not having him down low was evident that they missed him last night. And then as far as Karl Anthony Towns, to Chuck's point, Diesel, he was great last night. However, he was terrible the first 3 games. What he did last night was he started on the inside and worked his way out and started getting hot from 3. And you know what? Congratulations. However, you're down 3-1, and it's never happened before, and I don't think it's going to happen now. I mean, it is a tough mountain to climb. Yes, Minnesota's a really, really good team, but being down 3-0, history shows that you don't have a chance to win this series.
Last night, the Atlanta Braves defeated the Washington Nationals 2-0 on the efforts of Max Fried. Atlanta now 31-21 on the season. They will have first pitch coming up here in just 29 minutes from now. 7:20 first pitch. Nationals at Braves. The Panthers, that would be the Florida Panthers, defeated the New York Rangers last night 3-2 in overtime. The series is tied 2-2
because the Carolina Panthers don't win games.
Correct. Right. It's the Florida Panthers have won as many games in this series thus far with only 4 games. But the Carolina Panthers won last year in 17.
Oh, why
games.
did you have to go there?
The Stars and Oilers tonight will face off at 8:30. Dallas leads that series 2-1. Again, Cole, this proof that you're picking the wrong Dallas teams. You should be a Stars fan. You should be a Mavs fan.
Rangers.
They're fantastic.
Everybody
the
but the Cowboys
suck. Caitlin Clark scores a season-high 30 points, but the Fever fell last night to the Sparks. The Fever are 1-7 on the season, 11th in the Eastern Conference. The Negro Leagues have officially had their records integrated into the Major League Baseball record books. Josh Gibson will become the Major League Baseball single-season leader in batting average, slugging percentage, and OPS. Would you be offended, Cole, if you were the previous record holder and your record just gets surpassed?
Not if it were a situation like this.
No?
Not if it were a situation where the right thing was done.
I mean, if you're a historian of the game, I think you're just thrilled to have Josh Gibson's records and all these other players' records integrated back into the record books.
Sure.
I think I'd be a little miffed. You know, it's like I worked my ass off. I earned this record, and then you're just going to take it away because you've brought a whole other league's worth of data into the game. I don't know. And finally, Cole, the last one great little piece of baseball history. On this day in 1886, the Philadelphia Athletics tried to cheat and load the base passes with both base paths with sand to slow down the St. Louis Browns who they were playing. Charles Comiskey, whose name I know you know, noticed the change, had the grounds crew remove the sand, and his team only stole 14 bases on the A's for the next 2 games.
Thursday's show coming your way. Hope you can stay tuned all week long. We ask you to turn it on and leave it on.